We'll call the Pennington County Commission meeting for December 3rd, 2013 to order. We'll stand for a moment of silent reflection and the Pledge of Allegiance led by J.P. Donovan.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Next item is to review and approve the agenda. Does anyone wish to have any items from the agenda removed?
Good morning, Commissioners. Holly Handes, Commission Office Manager. I would respectfully request you remove item 17B.
So you're suggesting that we will
It's-
still have a,
You will have an executive session, however, that's a duplication and should not be on there.
okay. Any items? Someone
Mr. Chair,
care?
I'd make a motion to approve the agenda with removal of 17B as requested by the office manager.
Is there a second?
Second.
Motion and a second to approve the agenda with the one change. Any discussion? Hearing none, those in favor of the motion say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried. Next item is the consent agenda. Holly?
The Board of Commissioners uses a consent agenda to act on non-controversial and routine items quickly. The consent agenda is acted upon by one motion and vote of the board. Items may be removed from the consent agenda and placed on the regular agenda at the request of a board member or a citizen. Today, the consent agenda contains the following items. Approval of the minutes from the special meeting on November 18th, 2013. Approval of the minutes from the regular meeting of November 19th, 2013. Approval of the vouchers in the amount of $358,931.25. Approval of the Pennington County logo use guidelines. To schedule a public hearing on December 17th, 2013 for the year-end general fund supplement SP 13-017 for the public defender's budget. Approval of the alcohol beverage license renewals as submitted by the auditor's office. Approval of the services contract agreement for Whitetail Loop Road and 236th Street as submitted by the Highway Department. Approval of the permit to occupy the right-of-way for the RAS DAC bike tour as submitted by the Highway Department. To recognize the volunteers for the month of October 2013 as submitted by Human Resources, and approval of the 2014 Humane Society contract as submitted by the Sheriff's Office.
Does anyone wish any of the items on the consent agenda removed?
Number 12.
Number 12. Any others? Do we have a motion?
Mr. Chair, I'd make a motion to approve the consent agenda with the removal of item 12.
Is there a second?
No second.
Motion and a second to approve the consent agenda with item 12 removed. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried. Item 12.
Okay, I was just wanting some additional information because looking at the Google Maps that are attached with the application, I couldn't tell whether they were just coming from Palmer Gulch to the Central States Fair, or if they were also going down to the Badlands and then on to Phillip.
Is there anyone here who can enlighten us on that subject? What's your wish, Commissioner Holloway? We have no...
If we could do that, that'd be fine.
Okay, do we need a motion to defer that, Karen?
I make a motion to table it for later discussion.
Second.
Motion and a second to table item 12 until later in the agenda. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried. Item 15, resolution of necessity for the purchase of the Memorial Park Apartments. Pennington County Housing and Development Commission, James Olson, Esquire.
Good morning. I am pleased to be here this morning on behalf of the Pennington County Housing and Redevelopment Commission. The commission operates a project that is known as the Memorial Park Apartments. It's a 60-unit complex, low rent housing for the elderly. It's full all of the time. It was started in 1997. Actually occupied in 1998, and at that time, this commission, the county commission, approved a letter of intent for that project. The project was financed through a system of tax credits that was available, so that people could take tax credits for putting money into this program. The tax credits have been used up by the investors that are in the ownership group. And because those are used up, they want to sell their partnership interest. During the course of the operation of this project, at the beginning, a nonprofit corporation was formed. The board of directors of that nonprofit corporation is the board that composes the Pennington County Housing and Redevelopment Commission. And the articles of incorporation for that corporation require that in the event that it is dissolved or ceases to do business, that all of the assets flow into the Pennington County Housing and Redevelopment Commission. And so the process that we're starting on, we've been contacted by those investors. They want to sell out their interest in it. They're selling it out for a fraction of what the project is worth. The housing authority would assume the debt that is on the project and pay them, I think their request is for $300,000. And then the Pennington County Housing and Redevelopment Commission will collapse that limited partnership that owns it and become the owner of the project. And so then that was the original intent when it was started. This was the financing vehicle to get it to this point. The statutes say that the Housing and Redevelopment Commission needs to adopt a resolution of necessity for any project. So technically, although they've been operating this project since 1998, now they'll become the owner of it. So we're going to have the Redevelopment Commission adopt a resolution of necessity, and then that will come to you formally at your next meeting with a request for your approval of the action of the commission in adopting that resolution. It seems kind of a long way around the process, but that's what the statutes require. And because we're now technically becoming the owner, or the commission is, the redevelopment commission is, then we need to ask for approval of this. And so today is really a chance. I've asked J.P. Donovan, the chairman of the Housing and Redevelopment Commission, to be here, and Doug Wells, who's the executive director. We'd certainly be available to answer any questions that you might have. But I want you to understand, we're not envisioning a change of what that project does down there. It's just an opportunity so that now that the investors are wanting out, that the Housing and Redevelopment Commission can then take over the actual ownership of it. They've been doing all of everything anyway. So that's the process here this morning.
Jim?
JP, did you
Jim?
have anything? Excuse me. John.
You said that the investors wanted $300,000, and then the authority is going to take over the loan. Is that?
That's correct.
How much is left on that loan?
The loan is about
$730,000.
about 730. It changes every month, but sure. So yeah, so it'll be it'll all be paid for by the operation of the project.
Sure.
So we're not asking you for any money.
Right. And these apartments are located where at?
Next to River Ridge, right off of Finch, the Commissioner.
Okay.
There by the Boys Club.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions?
I do, Mr. Chair. One, KJ, maybe you can answer this question. I'll give you a little heads up so you can start thinking. But right now, the property taxes are paid by the development owners. Is that correct? And do they pay any taxes once this goes over to the South Dakota Pennington County Housing Authority?
Doug, why don't you, would you allow Mr. Commissioner? Chairman
Yes.
for Doug to answer?
Yes.
Thank you.
Pennington County housing properties are typically eligible for payment in lieu of taxes rather than regular property taxes, and I believe that's a separate application to submit for that. So it's a separate issue, but typically it would be the difference between regular property taxes under the current ownership and payment in lieu of taxes under Pennington County housing ownership.
Okay. Just so the public knows what's happening.
Any other questions?
That's why we're here. We'll bring it back with a formal resolution at your next meeting.
So do you need any action from us today?
I think the only thing that you need to do today is to authorize Ms. Hennies to publish the notice of this, because there's a publication required of the proposed resolution.
And that's to be done by the county?
Yes.
Okay. Do we want a motion to that effect? And if so, do we have a motion?
That'd be my motion.
Second.
Motion and a second to authorize publication of the notice. Any discussion?
Mr. Chair, I have one question on that item too. Mr. Olson, do you know, does the South There Pennington County Housing, do they reimburse the county for advertising fees?
I'm sure that they can.
Okay.
Any other questions? We have a motion and a second. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried. Thank you, Jim.
Thank you very much.
Since we don't get anything out.
Heine is here now. Do you want to go back to item 12, Commissioner
Sure.
Holloway?
That'd be great. Heine, can you tell me, are they going from the fairgrounds to the Badlands and the Badlands to Phillip?
Looks like.
Oh, I guess I didn't review that part. I reviewed the county roads they were gonna take. They're gonna take,
Well, if they go from the Badlands National Park, oh,
We have a motion to bring it off the table.
okay, I'll make a motion to bring
Thank
it
you.
off the table.
Second.
We have a motion and a second to bring it off the table. Who seconded that?
I did.
Okay, Commissioner Davis. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried. Thank you, Karen.
yes, they're going from the Badlands National Park to Rapid City via Highway 44. So that's a state highway. And the permit, our permit just covers the county roads, which is the last map, which shows Rapid City to 385, and then they're on a state highway to Hill City, and then they're on Old Hill City Road from Hill City to Keystone, and then they drop back down on 244.
So do you know how many bicyclists are gonna be in all this?
She didn't tell me that.
Is the sheriff aware of any of this? June 6th ought to be a good tourist season.
Well, we can postpone it or table it for 2 weeks and give the information to the sheriff.
Well,
This just it came to me because we have the permit to occupy the right of way, and
I don't know, there's some public safety, a little bit of public safety concern here. I don't know how many bicyclists there might be, but they're taking that Badlands Road back up to Wall. I mean, that's a heavily traveled area
That
in
is.
June, and same way with coming down Sheridan Lake Road.
okay.
Mr. Chairman, if I
Yes.
may. Kevin Tone, Pennington County Sheriff. I've not seen the information yet, so I guess a couple options. If you want to table it for 2 weeks and let us review it with Heine, we can do that. Or if you do approve it, we'll work with Heine and the group putting it on to make sure that it's adequately covered, but I've not seen the information yet.
I think I'd like to see it postponed and give them a chance to look at it, see how big this thing is, what all it's gonna involve as far as, making sure that the people, if we're gonna grant them a permit to be on the highway, then we gotta make sure that it's gonna be safe for them as well.
You want to just continue it then to a January meeting? We got plenty of time. That'd give us more time for information.
Whatever you guys, whatever period of time you need, I guess we'll continue it for 2 weeks.
And also, Mr. Chair, honey, does this person that made the application live here locally?
No, I think she lives in Sioux Falls.
'Cause it would,
They always set this bike run up, and then we usually get notified just a few days before, and I've stressed to them that we need this a lot earlier before you put your maps out and brochures out, so.
Yeah.
that- At least they abided by that. They're
This
getting the
time, huh?
information approved before they put it out to all their members and advertise it.
well, it'd just be interesting to see, I mean, do they just Google the roads and set it up? Do they really
Yeah, that's
know
how
what
they
they're
do
doing? They don't really know what they're doing then. Yeah, okay.
Okay, do we have a motion to continue this?
So moved, Mr. Chair.
Is there a second?
Second.
Motion and a second to continue this till when?
The next meeting in December.
Next meeting in December. Any further discussion? All in favor of the motion, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried.
I think women put too damn much power in it.
Item 16 is the lien release request. Is Holly here? Right behind us, okay.
Okay, are you there?
Yes, I'm here.
Okay, you're on.
Hello?
Hello. Hello.
Hello. I'm asking for, I don't know, do I give my name?
Don't have to.
I had, the Pennington County helped me pay for my COBRA insurance when I became disabled and wasn't able to work. And, I'm not able to pay I think it's like $8,100 and some dollars because I'm on disability, and I'm asking if the lien could be forgiven.
This is Commissioner Holloway. Why do you need it released? Is there some other financial thing
Well,
that's going on?
I can't afford to pay it.
Well,
At one time, when I came before the commissioners, I was losing my home, and they had a lien on my home, and at that time, they decided, they released the title to my home so it could be sold. It sold way below what it was worth. Otherwise, it was going to go back to the bank. And I never received any money from that, my sale of my home. But because there was a lawsuit pending, they wanted to wait to see the outcome of the lawsuit. And so that so the commissioners decided to just hold off, but I never received any money from the lawsuit. So I'm asking if, because I'm in such a limited income that I live check to check or month to month.
So you apparently have been contacted by a collection agency to try to collect on this? Because I see you haven't paid anything since 2008.
Right, but I have not. I didn't even know it went into collections until they had contacted me, and at some point a few years ago, and then I've had so many surgeries. I just haven't been up to taking care of this. So now now I'm asking if you would be able to just forgive the lien, and so I don't have it in collections. That's a large amount of money, and I hate having that in a collection. I don't have any income to pay for it, so, and I'm still disabled.
This is Commissioner Buskerud. I see evidently there was a lawsuit and you won the lawsuit, correct?
I won the lawsuit, but there was not the money all went to the lawyer. It took several years. The money went to the lawyers, the expenses, and then there wasn't enough money to cover the medical bills. So I never received any income or money from that lawsuit.
You won, but you didn't win anything.
Right.
Who was the lawsuit against?
Dr. Stephen Schwartz. It was a medical lawsuit. That's why I'm disabled. I know it's a lot of work going through something like that and not getting anything in return.
Mr. Chair.
Yes.
This is Commissioner Davis. Oh, sorry, we done. You said that you've had numerous surgeries since then. Is there other lien to other counties out there besides this one?
No, because I'm on Medicare, and the reason why the Pennington County was helping because I was working for the hospital and I couldn't afford the COBRA insurance, and it took 2 years to get on Medicare. So that's where the money came from the county. Now I've been on Medicare, and my supplemental insurance is covering my medical bills now. But it took, 2 years to get on disability.
Excuse me, this is Nancy Troutman. And I noticed that you were just paying us $25 a month until April of 2008. I recognize that that does not take the balance down very far, but are you telling us you just can no longer afford the 25? Because I am looking at your expenses.
Honestly, I don't even remember that. Because of all the surgery, I've had 6 back surgeries since the first back surgery of the lawsuit. So I don't remember, honestly, because I was on a lot of medication. So I don't even remember paying $25 a month. But that's, right now, I'm behind in so much, some of my bills, and it's just, I'm still paying on some of my medical expenses and I just don't have, it's hard to know because my expenses can fluctuate every month depending on how many times I have to go to the doctors, because I have to drive an hour to go to see some of my doctors. So it can fluctuate in gas prices and everything. And right now, I'm just I'd never be able to get it paid off.
So you say you couldn't even make a good faith effort of $25 a month?
At this point, right now, no. I have. Right now, I got behind this last 2 months, and it's been hard to even catch up with that. So right now, no, I don't know. Right now, I'm just struggling right now.
she wins the lottery.
Any other questions or comments?
Not from me.
Mr. Chair.
Yes, sir.
Unless you have any questions.
Ma'am, normally, if we're gonna release one of these, it's because there's something going on. Somebody's trying to buy a house and this lien's hanging over them, or some such thing. If nobody's trying to collect this on you and it just stays on the books, what difference does it make?
Well, it's so hard to have something in collections, and it's just that $8,000. Emotionally, it's a hard thing to have hanging over my head.
Mr. Chair,
Yes.
are you saying then that the collection agency is calling you now?
No, a few years ago, they had called me, but I haven't heard from them for quite a while. But I think that they called me. The reason why I found out is that there was another medical bill that went into collections, and that's when they had told me that the county had put the money into collections.
Well,
So that's
I realize that you've been through a lot, but actually it's been in collections and you were paying to on that collection in December of 2006. So, there were sporadic payments.
But when my mother died, I lived with my dad for a little bit, and so, I had more money at that time. But right now, I'm on my own, and I helped my dad when I was living there, and with some of the expenses, but I didn't have to pay rent like I do now. So. So I've, lived in my home for the last 3.5, 4 years.
Well, I can't see releasing it because we're not doing anything, and on the other hand, we're not gonna get any money out of this one anyway, so I'm gonna make a motion to release it.
We have a motion to release it. Is there a second? I'll second it for discussion.
But I have nothing more to add. I just don't see coming down the line. Do you buy lottery tickets?
I used to, but I never was lucky, so
Nothing else.
Any other comments?
Well, Mr. Chair, we're talking about an $8,000 and some dollars of debt. We have an equity value in her motor vehicle of $18,000. We have, she's making the payment. I recognize she needs to have a car, but there is an indication she has equity in that car. She's already making a payment. Couldn't she refinance and add this money on and continue to make a car payment? The other thing that I noticed in her application is that she's paying $150 a month in credit card payments. I guess I'm struggling a little bit, to be quite frank, that we reached out with taxpayer dollars to help this lady when she needed help, and now she's saying she can't pay it back. But she does have some equity in a car, and she's making considerable credit card payments. So somewhere along the line, she's been spending some money. I mean, that may.
Some of that was for medical bills, so.
Of course, I knew you would say that, but you know, there's some issues here just in looking at this that I struggle to approve that, to approve a release on it, and I just don't think that I can vote for that.
Any other discussion? We'll have a roll call vote.
Yes.
Davis,
No.
Holloway,
Oh,
Troutman,
No,
Peterson,
Yes. Motion failed. So to dispose of this, do we have to do anything further? Okay, next item is executive session.
Motion to
And
go into executive session.
Second.
did we get a second? Motion and a second to go into executive session for
For
department.
personnel matters.
All in favor of the motion, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, motion carried. Okay, do we have a motion?
Yes, sir, to come out of executive session.
Second.
Motion and a second to come out of executive session. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, motion carried. Next item is from Human Resources, item 18A.
Good morning, Commission. Nick Strout, Human Resource Director, Pennington County. The first item we have for you today is a facility closure policy that you were given with a memo from me and the policy draft that we ended up with. This has came from after each weather event or closure event, we always say this is something we need to get, and then after Storm Atlas, this is really since it was an extended storm, this is something that we had to move on. The facility closures, where this stems from is after every event, since I've been here 4.5 years, and people have told me in the past, we close a facility, essential personnel come and do their job because that's what we need, and then there's other people that are here for a variety of reasons, and we don't know. And we've had people be injured, and then we've had people here and we don't know why. And so we're trying to come up with a policy to address some of the issues we have without doing a couple things, without affecting emergency personnel and how they operate, and without taking anything away from how department heads or elected officials operate their departments. So a couple things on this. Before, we had notification issues with our employees, and we feel that's no longer an issue with the text messaging and the nixle that Dustin and his team from emergency management have put into place. We really are getting good notification, early notification to most of our employees, so we're really excited about that. So people claiming that they didn't know and then coming into work, those have really cut down. This doesn't affect the sheriff's office, Heine and his highway folks, Leanne and her dispatch people. Those are emergency personnel, and they're going to have to show up to work, and they have their own policies and procedures on how that happens. What we did is we created what we were calling a temporary essential personnel, and the reason we went that direction is that during an event, we can't always predict who will need to come to work, but we wanted some sort of mechanism to make department heads and supervisors responsible for the people that they're asking to come to work when we close a facility. So we took this to the department head group. We had a very good discussion. We had a lot of edits to the original proposal, and then this is what we're bringing forward today. So with that, I would stand for any questions.
Mr. Chair. So,
Yes.
so temporary essential personnel could be, like, building and grounds needs to have people come in and clean out parking lots or whatever. Is that what you're heading for?
I was thinking more of someone like myself, for example, or a payroll specialist, or an attorney who might have a big case that's coming up the next day after a closure that just has to get work done, who wouldn't normally, during a normal closure, have to get work done. But because of the circumstances of work and how it's going at moment in time would need to come to work. During Storm Atlas, there was an example is Holly had to come to work to get out some notifications to, I believe, you folks. Normally, she wouldn't need to come to work, but a certain set of circumstances dictated that she came to work that day. So that's our idea. But if Mike and his guys, because they are in charge of our grounds, those could be essential personnel. They're always going to be needed during events.
And the other department that I was thinking about was IT.
Yeah.
How would we handle, what,
And that's, maybe Russ his people would be deemed non-essential personnel. However, if a server went down and him and his top server guy needed to come in, then they would be temporary essential for that event. And then if there was any questions afterwards, we would have a mechanism to come to Russ and say, Russ, why were you and Mike or whoever were here? And he would have, well, Mike and I were here because a server went down and we needed to get it up. But normally, we might not need IT if there's an ice storm or if there's a one-day blizzard. And Commissioner Holloway was there for the discussion. I don't know if you had any thoughts?
I don't. Commissioner Davis.
Mr. Chair, I agree that we need to have a fixed policy on this issue, but I also think in the policy position there, the chairman of the Board of Commissioners and others, you should also add the chief judge of the Seventh Circuit.
Absolutely, and I talked to
And,
Judge Davis this
He
morning.
needs to be there, definitely.
And that part we were just taking from our current practice, and so we can definitely add that in. So Chairman of the Board of Commissioners, Emergency Management, Pennington County Sheriff's Office, and the Chief Justice of the Seventh Circuit. Presiding Judge. Yeah, and that was just an oversight on our part, so I appreciate that.
Any other questions or comments? Do we have a motion?
So the department heads think this is a good policy.
Since I've sent this out and I've invited them all here, they've seemed to be happy with the edits that we made after the meeting we have, but I'd let them speak for themselves if they disagree.
Well, I'll make a motion to approve it, and that'll spark some interest maybe.
Second.
Motion and a second to approve the facility closure policy. Any department head that wishes to challenge the motion?
Or support it.
Any other comments? If not, those in favor of the motion say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried. Next item is item B, non-exempt hourly employee payroll processing.
Thank you. This second item today is addressing an inconsistency which we have in how we pay our hourly employees. On January 1st, 2011, we switched the way we pay hourly employees to paying them the number of hours that they work within a pay period. And I'm going to ask KJ to come up if I screw any of this up. So a person will, when they come to work for us, they will be either paid 160 hours or 200 hours, depending on how many hours are in that pay period. That is a switch from the old way we pay hourly employees, which was an average of 173.33, which over the course of the year equaled 2,080 hours, the same number that the new hourly people pay. Through attrition, we are down to about 300 employees paid the old hourly way. But that creates problem for our supervisors and our payroll specialists, because basically they have to run payroll two different ways. They have to run it the old way, and they have to run it the new way. And especially when it comes to overtime and leave without pay, they have to stop, think if it's an old hourly employee and figure it one way, or if it's a new hourly employee and figure it a different way. So we've heard from the supervisors, we've heard from the payroll specialists, this is a change that they all support. So the reason we're here today is 2014 has given us an opportunity in June to minimize the impact to the old hourly employees, where we can adjust the pay and get them on the new hourly pay system, and correct for when they were hired, they were paid for hours that they had not yet worked at the close of the first pay period they ever worked here. So there's some math on the second page that Jessica was kind enough to put on paper for you. And we've given the employees enough notice, if this were to pass, and enough options with allowing them to use their benefit time, a combination of benefit time, leave without pay, or a combination of benefit time and leave without pay, that they can make a decision with enough time that this won't affect their ability to pay their bills. So with that, I will stand for any questions.
KJ, did you have anything to offer on this?
No, I guess I would just say that, you know, when we switched to the hourly with the pay period ending on the third Saturday in January of 2011, we thought perhaps we had solved this problem. And we really have in some ways, except now we have about 50-50, and it gets confusing because you have to stop and think about, is employee A old or new hourly? I saw the chuckle on the old hourly.
Yeah, well, I was informed that the new way is really the old way.
The way old way, I was told.
Way old way.
You're old.
We've talked about this for a lot of years. It happened back a long time ago that we went to this averaging for a number of reasons that really don't matter anymore. But I think that this will solve the problem for everyone. And there's always been a little bit of confusion because people, of course, report their time through the third Saturday, but we paid them through the end of the month. So some people would still think, what's happening with those 8 or 10 work days out there if they left or when they came? Sometimes you end up with someone who would leave shortly and we'd have to pull the check and reissue it. So I think it'll just solve a lot of problems, and it will most importantly bring complete consistency to the hourly employees in Pennington County.
Any other comments or questions? Do we have a motion?
Mr. Chair, I would make a motion to approve the non-exempt pay switch effective for the July 2014 pay period and to allow employees to apply the options as presented above, or I don't know if you want me to read those options? Okay.
Is there a second?
Second.
Motion and a second. Any further discussion? If not, those in favor of the motion say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Scott.
Scott, Nick,
Nick?
or Nick?
I got you mixed up. Sorry about that. And
You've been called worse things, huh?
what you call a time lag. Next item is items from the auditor. KJ.
Good morning, KJ Peterson, Chief Deputy Auditor. We have a few posted supplements to take care of year-end accounting. The first supplement that was posted is for the capital projects funds, which includes the large project going on east of us on Block 99 that includes expenses for parking. There's actually some project administration. The largest expense in this year being the administration building, courthouse remodel, energy plant, and evidence building. As we prepare each year's budget, we do not budget any thing in the construction account. The funding support for this was the bond proceeds that were closed on, I believe, in December of 2010, and we've been utilizing those those bonds to make our monthly payments for the bills. And so while all this does is the bookkeeping that accounts for budget authority that is going to be equal to the budget expenses for the year. In addition to that, we have two smaller capital projects that, again, were not budgeted for in 2013. The first one being the tower project. The board approved that about this time last year, and there was two towers that were completed in this year. Funding was coming from various sources for that, including the county, the city, even the county fire fund, and some grant revenue came in. And so all of that revenue has come from the different sources. Again, this is just the balancing of the approved spending authority to cover the expenses that incurred for that. And the last one was actually a relatively small amount. I believe it was earlier this fall. There was a $2 million assigned reserve in accumulated building for the Health and Human Services building project that's just getting underway. And we did receive one bill that we will account for in 2013 for $8,334. And so I posted this with the assumption that we would pay for that out of the $2 million reserve. And then we'll track that. We'll probably be back here at this time next year with a pretty much larger number on that, and finishing up the administration building and going forward with those. So these are all funded projects from various sources, including bonds, revenues, other agencies who contribute that were not originally approved in the 2013 budget. And this is just giving us the spending authority so that we don't close with negative balances at the end of the year.
Yes.
KJ, on that tower project, as you pointed out, that funds from that was coming from several different sources. Some of those were I thought, already in their budgets, like county fire and some of the other ones. But you're saying we're getting the funds with this motion from restricted fund balances. We don't have to list where we're getting the money?
The revenues that came into the accumulated building project came from county fire. We did an operating transfer. At county general, there was originally $100,000 and that came from E911 and 85, I think, from the general fund. All those monies were budgeted for in 2013 in those funds, and we moved them through that operating transfer process that allows us to move the cash. And all this is doing is now taking all that cash that went into the restricted fund balance to account for it in the accumulated building. Otherwise, we would have little pieces of the tower project in budgets all over, and we don't like to do that, and neither do our auditors. So.
Thank you.
Any other questions or comments? Do we have a motion?
Well, this is going to be like reading a book.
There's a lot of numbers there, especially with this one, because we're building a big building.
So, Mr. Chair, I'd move to supplement to the capital projects fund budgets. Number one, project administration, $10,000. Number two, parking structure for $100,000. Number three, administration building for $9 million. Number four, courthouse for $15,000. Number five, energy plant for $700,000. Number six, evidence building for $1,500,000 from cash reserves, which are bond proceeds of 2010 A, B, and C. The total of which is $11,325,000, as well as the accumulated building fund tower project budget of $482,004, and the HHS building project budget of $8,334 from non-budgeted current year revenues and restricted fund balance for tower project, and from assigned fund balance for HHS building.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any other comments? Any comments from the public? Hearing none, those in favor of the motion say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried. Item B.
Item B is a number of supplements to close out the year end with no negative budgets. I'll go through the general fund budgets first. We have a request from the election budget from revenues received for services for taking care of the city election in the amount of $23,052. Jail supplement in the amount of $375,000 from over-collected revenues at the jail. I'll let the sheriffs speak to any of the department heads assigned if they have any questions other than election. Jail medical for $24,000, weed for $37,490, and mountain pine beetle for $251,000. These are all revenue-supported budgets. You may remember we talked a lot about the mountain pine beetle one early in the year, and Scott was informing you that we were getting the revenues. They weren't budgeted for in 2013. We kind of wait till the end of the year to do some of these for a couple reasons. To see if there's attrition in a budget that, or, a change in what was the original budgeted expense that might allow it. And sometimes we don't even have to do one. The big one like the mountain pine beetle, we knew that would come. So the total of this general fund, $710,542 supplements to the designated budgets will not affect your cash reserves because they're all supported by non-budgeted revenue that we received this year.
KJ, we used to, we being the commission, used to get monthly budget summary reports. And we don't get those anymore. So when we come up with these supplements like this, at least I don't have a way of looking to say, yes, this budget really is in trouble and needs the extra, whatever the dollar amount is being requested. Do you know why we don't get them? Is that part of the new? Accounting?
And we don't send them out anymore. They're out there for you to look at.
Yes, and that's my apologies, my mistake. When we changed over to Springbrook, the report was massive, and we were working to try and get it smaller, and I just haven't gotten back to that. So I will do that.
So they're out there in
Springbrook land that I have to go pull down and create for you.
They're created.
I know, but I have to
okay.
run them and get them.
Yeah, I know that I use that, I call it the commissioner report. And it doesn't have line items in it because it's about a 12-page report that basically has the budgets by fund and just the total approved, the total spent, the total remaining. So I'll be glad to make sure that Holly sees where it's what we call a published report. You could go out and run it anytime, and it would give you where we're at. And the new thing with Springbrook is that you could run that every single day, and it's going to be different, where in the old system, we entered things and waited, and actually then you posted at the end of each month. So it is advantageous in that respect for all departments, because you could run a budget report today to see where you're at, and would see everything that was processed through yesterday in our office, so.
Well, you rightfully point out that these are over-collected revenues, and they don't impact our cash reserves for this year. But every year, we expect to have over-collected revenues and underspent budget to carry us into next year. If we obligate all of those in this year, then it will have an impact on our reserves when we start working on next year's budget.
It will.
And it'll have an impact on the amount of taxes that we have to raise. So
I agree.
I think these are big deals when we do this, and we want to make sure that everybody really needs this money, and it's not a want, it's a need. Because sometimes it's pretty easy, because you've brought in extra revenues and so on, and say, oh, geez, now I can get this new desk that I've been wanting for a while. And I'd like to just make sure that we're addressing needs and not wants when it comes to these supplements at the end of the year.
Mr. Chairman, I would agree that there's a big difference between having a budget that's in the hole and needing the money to bring it back to zero, as opposed to increasing their budget for the year.
Oftentimes, when we do these revenue supplements, obviously, they were never budgeted for in the process 18 months, almost 2 years ago, and they are new contracts that meant there was more expense, and the expense was being supported by the non-budgeted revenue. That is very often what has happened. Grants, new contracts. I don't know if Sheriff Tolman would like to speak to theirs.
But we don't really get that in this little report that we got here. We don't get that. I mean, the auditor's office wants $23,000 to replenish for additional expenses that was paid out from the original budget. But we don't know what those expenses were. We don't know what that budget looks like, and that's what my concern is. And I'm not just picking on the auditor.
No.
That just happens to be the number one on the list here.
Can I speak to ours?
Sure.
Mr. Chairman, if I may.
Yes.
Kevin Tone, Pennington County Sheriff, and I can speak to our supplement request, and I'll break it down just in some broad categories, but about $225,000 of that is additional revenue collected for the phones. So that's offset by revenue we've collected. We just need the authority to spend the money. And then about $140,000 of that is additional salary, primarily some overtime. We house federal inmates, and because of that and our population being up, we opened an additional pod for most of the summer, and that was largely supported by overtime. And then about $10,000 of that is miscellaneous meals, et cetera. I didn't break that $10,000 down any further, but I could if you wanted. And again, we are going to overcollect our revenues. In addition to this, we're still going to overcollect by about $650,000, $700,000. Again, largely driven because our federal numbers were high, but it also drives these numbers, needing the additional expenditure authority to cover the cost of doing business. So, like KJ said, they are supported by the revenues.
The 225 is for what?
The phone system.
You put a new phone system in?
No, for the phones, the use of the phones, inmate phone system, the revenue generated out of that.
So that's not where you're spending the money, though. I mean, you're asking for $375,000. So $140,000 is going to overtime, $10,000 to miscellaneous meals.
About $225,000 for cover the extra revenue generated by the phones. It's money in, money out. Correct.
That's right.
Okay.
And I think I kind of explained especially the $251,000 on the mountain pine beetle, and the board's pretty aware of that. I don't know if Scott is here. Oh, he is.
Yeah, both those on mine, both the weed and the mountain pine beetle, those are grant-supported projects. On the weed one, it was a salt cedar project and a leafy spurge project that we did. If we didn't have those grant dollars, we wouldn't do those those projects. So you basically do the project and then you submit and get the grant money after the fact. So it's just to cover your upfront expenses that are contractual, the salt cedar ones, so.
And just to speak to the election one, I do know that the bill that went to the city for the election, it was around 37,000. Of course, we don't budget for the expenses of the ballots and the stock and supplies and all that, and then we bill them back. But of course, we don't need the full supplement because we do bill them for the staff time that we work on during, May and June, and obviously that is budgeted, so.
Mr. Chair.
Yes.
KJ, but don't we put that into the beginning budget? If you're gonna run a city election, I remember that money already put into that budget.
I don't believe Julie put the money in for the city election, and she hasn't done it.
So,
Even on election years, when we have a countywide election, we never know who's going to contract with us for holding their elections. Sometimes they choose to have them on their own. Douglas School District always has their own election. Of course, they're a small one, but so other than on election day doing the staff time that we do in our office and, some minimal phone calls perhaps during the course of it, they handle all of the balloting and counting and all that. With the city, we've done, who else, Karen, can you help me remember, we do? Hill City, I think, yeah, so.
I'm gonna wanna see the report that we want. I think that's important.
Any other questions or comments? KJ, I'm having a little trouble deciphering the paperwork here. On the cover sheet on this item, there's the items we're talking about on the front. Then we move to the next page, page 2, and we have 2 more. So do we have 3 motions to make?
Yes, you do.
Relative to this issue, and then you go further back in the packet, and there's, is that a duplication, this part?
You should have 3 supplements attached with this section. The one that will cover the 710,000 and now I'm missing my supplement letter.
The jail medical for 75,000?
Yes, jail medical for 74,000 and
then the crisis care and extension, 6,500. So all 3 motions are on the back page.
we can address them all together. I posted them separately because this one is coming from non-budgeted, from over-collected revenues, and the other is coming from non-budgeted revenue, so it will affect the cash reserves. And last of all, the extension request is coming from the equipment reserve.
So, are you, clarify for me, we need 3 separate motions or 1 motion to cover them all?
It doesn't make any difference to me as long as we include all of the numbers and sources of the support for that. I broke it down in the 3 ways because I posted in the 3 ways that I indicated. The first one for $710,542. The second one for the 74,000 for additional needs for jail medical. Karen is here if you have any questions regarding that. And last of all, the request for 8, $6,587 from the equipment reserve for the copier at the extension office.
What's the wish of the commission? You want to discuss these other two items separately?
So, Mr. Chair, I just would ask the other commissioners, since we spent quite a bit of time on the request for the $710,000 plus dollars, do we want to have them have the department heads come back with a better, or the auditor, a better explanation of the funds? I mean, can we go ahead and do the other motions, or do you want to continue it all till next meeting? I'm kind of not sure what people are thinking.
What are we looking at time-wise in terms of your processes?
Well, these are posted hearings. I'm assuming that if the motion was made to address them at the meeting on the 17th, I would just add a notice at the bottom so that they would be on the board posted.
Yeah.
December 17th, as I understand it, is the last meeting of the year, and is why I come to you now, so that there are any questions on these or any others. We have an opportunity to address them in that final meeting of the year. We can certainly get you a budget report and a revenue report regarding the $710,000. The request for the $74,000 on jail medical will decrease the reserves. Is coming from unassigned fund balance. And I believe I gave the board, but I brought one just in case, information at the last meeting, just kind of an update on what's left in contingency, what's left in, and what the general fund assigned reserves are, which includes that building equipment reserve. There is currently if this $6,587 supplement was approved, it would leave $125,605.
What's the wish of the commission? Yes.
To answer your question, I would just soon wait and see the report that we get for that budget, what's left, and to see if the amounts are needed, or just, gee, it'd be sure nice to have some more money. I'd like to know
Although
that.
I will say that there are some that are a fill-back kind of situation,
Sure.
as in the weed and the mountain pine beetle. I mean, that's a fill-back, and I guess I'm not sure how that's going to change with any report.
Probably not. And there are some that want to get into our emergency equipment fund, and I'm sure they're not going to want to wait for 2 more weeks.
Well, and that's why I came up. I'm Tiffany Meyer, Pennington County 4-H. In order for it to be here by December 31st, we have to order it today. So that's why it's a 3-week turnaround for it.
Mr. Chair,
Yes.
for that notion that the copier, all the state has to do is write a check.
If we had any money.
You don't need to take the lumps today.
Okay, thank you. What's your wish? Are there questions about the jail medical and the crisis care and extension areas, or just the first item, the $710,000?
Obviously, I just don't think we got a lot of information provided to us that we could really make a good decision on. At the end of the day, we'll probably approve all of these. And maybe, maybe we should make a motion to approve them all as presented, trusting that everybody would provide us the correct information if we ask for it, or maybe when we ask for it. But I'm just a little frustrated because we get this stuff and it seems like we're supposed to just rubber stamp it without really knowing why some of these budgets are over, what their bottom line looks like, and I don't distrust anybody that says, geez, I've got the extra revenues. I believe that they've got those. But I don't quite understand, it's one thing if there's been something special happened that's drove a budget into the hole, and they've got the revenues to generated from whatever that activity was that drove them in the hole. So something else if they just didn't budget appropriately and have now trying to get another supplement to their budget, or if they've got some wants that they say, geez, I've got this extra revenue, so I want to do this and I want to do that, and come in with the supplement at the end of the year without a lot of discussion about what those wants are. So that's my frustration with it. I don't know what we ought to do. I mean, I don't know. I guess I'll leave it at that. I don't know where we should go with it.
Just looking through some of this material, for example, the Health and Human Services, the paragraph, Behavior Management Systems has ended their 2013 fiscal year for the Crisis Care Center. For 2013, they have had only a total of $20,445 of unreimbursed services. Behavior Management Systems exhausts all other potential payment sources prior to making this request.
Mm-hmm.
That strikes me as pretty straightforward. But what's your wish?
All right, so is that the motion? The motion needed is to supplement the general fund crisis care center budget in the amount of $20,445 from the assigned crisis center reserve to be paid to behavior management systems. Is that the motion we need?
That's the motion.
I would make that motion.
I'll second it.
Does that include the, we have a motion and a second. Does that include the general fund for extension? That was a purchase.
It doesn't. This was just the crisis care center.
I assumed from that you were wanting to take them separately.
Well, I'm okay with that one.
The crisis care
Somebody
center,
else might be okay
again,
with the
is one of
extension
those-
building.
That one's coming from the assigned reserve. The board has been contributing funds to at the end of each year for a number of years now.
I think we approved that purchase or earlier on, did we not?
You did. This is the accounting end of it that I have to come to you with every year that keeps everything at the end of the year closed with a positive balance. Because if you approve the expense earlier in the year, we didn't always incorporate the supplement motion at that time. The logic behind that has always been that by the end of the year, some things change and the needs are not always as great as they may have been when they came back in March or June with a request for a full amount, and now they've absorbed some of those costs.
But is Extension asking, are we on Extension too, or just, I mean, the motion was Crisis Care Center, right?
No, I
Just
think we
Crisis
need to
Care
take care of
Center.
that motion and then handle next.
Okay, so you're ready to vote on the crisis care reserve? Any further discussion on that? If not, those in favor of the motion say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, motion carried.
I want to make a motion to approve the, well, before I do that, KJ, are they asking from that equipment fund that we have? Is that where they want the money to come from?
Yes, there's several, that's where they're asking for the funds to come from for the copiers.
I'll make a motion that we approve that extension for $6,587 to come from the, what is it called, Emergency Equipment Fund, whatever it's called.
Equipment Reserve Fund, assigned fund.
Do we have a second?
Second.
Have a motion and a second. Any further discussion?
Well, if we're going to pay them money out there to man it and staff it, we got to give them the equipment to use to do it.
Any other discussion? Not, those in favor of the motion say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, motion carried.
All right.
Takes us
Okay.
back to the 710,000.
Well, but let's, I would do the Health and Human Services one here for jail medical. If I can get some explanation from Karen as it relates to the revenues, because you say that there's over-collected revenues of $24,000, and you've listed, looks like 3 different accounts here. Can you tell us a little bit about that over-collected revenue?
Karen Romey, Pennington County Health and Human Services. This would be over-collected revenue from those, from collection of liens. And it would be from unspent funding from all my budgets within the department. So collectively, also that includes the Veteran Service Office, which when we started the year, we did not know if they were going to approve their supplement, and so that would include that as well. So that was when we set the revenue for the Veteran Service Office, we set it at 0 because we didn't know if the legislature was going to approve that. They have done that, so that would include that as well. So basically, it's a combination of that and over collection of liens and reimbursements from any medical expenses that were reimbursed back to us.
So the $24,000 has nothing to do with jail medical.
No, it does not.
It wasn't revenues that was generated from that service that we were providing.
No, it was not. It's just I look at my budget as a whole and tried to offset the cost to the general funds. Then I reported the over-collected revenue.
If I can ask a question here, it says, I mean, all the figures I see are 24,000. But then it says the jail medical supplement request is 99,000.
Karen does need 99,000. She's indicated to the board that she has support of 24,000 of it. So I posted it in 2 spots.
Oh, so that's what the
Yeah.
75.
The first 24 is supported by the revenues and unspent budget. The remaining 74 will come from unassigned fund balance.
And I take it that we really don't have a choice in this, do we? Have you already spent it, or you've estimated what you're going to spend, so?
Normally, I wouldn't like to bring attention to a budget supplement, but I really do think that this gives a good opportunity for me to do that. I did provide for the board some data information, which I called kind of the barometer of the community. And I think that the jail is kind of a barometer of what's going on in our community, what we're doing right, what we're doing wrong. It's also that of the state, what they're possibly doing right or what they're doing wrong. Unfortunately, the jail is kind of, I call it, it's a reactive system, and we're trying to be proactive. What the two driving forces for the jail medical that's driving the budget is mental health services and the reduction of Indian Health Services taking an active role in providing medical services for the population they serve. Those are the two driving forces that are driving this budget. We have, and I've talked to the board before about this when I did during my evaluation. We do have an opportunity now. I think that we really need to look at this, how we can reinvest. We have some funding left over from the involuntary mental health budget. And I think we need to look at how we can reinvest those dollars into looking at what's going on and why is mental health such a major issue within Pennington County? What can we do differently? I mean, it's really affecting the four major core offices within the county: public defender, state's attorney, the sheriff's office, of course, the jail, and health and human services. So 5 core offices. And that's basically what is driving our budget. Individuals are coming in, and I'm sure the sheriff will talk to you from a correctional or from a crime statistics, but I'm going to talk to you from the fact that I look at each one of these bills as they come in. I also am, our department also works with the individuals in the jail and outside of the jail, and we have some issues that we need to resolve within this community. And I think we need to look at it with the same force and the same effort that we even did with the pine beetle, and that might seem strange to say, but we really do. We need to change some things locally, and we need to change some things within the state, because everything is falling back on the county. It's kind of a domino effect, and it's definitely showing in the jail medical budget. So this is a reaction to things that are going outside.
Do you think that the state's legislation that really put more people from the state penitentiary into county jails, has that affected that somewhat? You don't? Do you have an opinion on that?
I do.
I figured you would.
But I think I will, what's the word, abstain? I do have opinion, well, you know, I have opinion on everything, but I think I'll leave it for a different time. But I would like to definitely, I think that we really need to take a proactive stand from this board, from the legislative stand, I mean, on the issues that are related to mental health and what's going on in our community. People are staying longer within our jail system because there's unavailability for the Human Services Center. So we're keeping people that traditionally would have went down there for maybe 3 to 6 months are really staying here in our jail. So it's a major issue, and we're doing some very proactive steps, you know, to try to stay ahead of it. But it's really kind of, at this point, it's almost like a finger in the dike. I mean, we really need to look at this very seriously.
Mr. Chair.
Yes.
You know, and frankly, Karen is watches her budget as good as anybody in the county, and so she says she needs $99,000 more in jail medical because of the additional services that she's had to fund for jail medical. I don't question that, but I think the $24,000 that we're saying is over-collected revenues to support this supplement is misleading. It's misleading because it implies that the $24,000 in additional revenues was generated as a result of this over utilization of the budget. You know, when the sheriff talks about he needs $225,000 to pay the commission to the phone service provider because the phone system was overutilized, and all of that $225,000 came from the revenues that was generated from the phone. I mean, I think that's pretty clear cut, and we should supplement that as it relates to that. But it's too fast and loose, I think, when we just say, I got extra revenue, so I want extra money to put in my budget. That extra revenue, we're expecting to have extra revenues collected through the years. That's going to help support our next year's budget. And so that's the difficulty that I'm having with it is just because I don't think we're identifying the revenue sources that go along with the additional expenses. And if that was the case, if the 24,000 was a result of the 99,000 expenses, I'm great with that, but that's not the case. And so I don't know if that's the case with some of these other ones that we're saying we got extra revenues to support the budget.
So, KJ, I take it that we cannot supplement the jail medical for 99,000. We would have to do it the way you have it posted of 24,000.
No, you can, it's been posted for 24 and 99. You can supplement it, or 24 and 75, so you can supplement it for 99.
I'll make a motion to supplement the jail medical for 99,000 from.
From unassigned fund
Yeah.
balance.
That's what I was trying to say.
Second.
We have a motion and a second?
Mr. Chair,
Yes.
I probably should have got this in before the motion was made, but Karen refused to answer when she was asked a question by Commissioner Buskerud. And I think there's no time like the present for that answer, because we're asking for money to supplement basically what the state is shoving down the county's throats across the state. And they're doing it again. They did it a few years ago, and now they're saying, whoa, what a great program this is we've come up for you. And it's for you, it's for the taxpayers of Pennington County that they're going to get nailed to the wall with this program. So I'd like to hear your answer, but,
Well, then, I'll make it short.
okay.
My answer would be yes. Yes, I do think it has made a major impact on the county budget.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Any other comments? We have a motion and a second. You okay with the motion, Karen? All in favor of the motion, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried. Now, are we back to the 710,000?
What we have not yet addressed is general fund election, general fund jail, general fund weed, and general fund mountain pine beetle is what I believe we have not yet addressed.
So if, given the motion that we just made, this 710,000 would be minus the 24,000.
That's correct.
Okay, with that correction, do you have your math done, Commissioner Troutman?
I'm just checking it, you never know. So really, the amount that we're looking at is 686,542.
What's your wish relative to that?
So, Mr. Chair, I'm going to move that we approve the supplements from, supplements to the general fund for the number one, election, 23,052. Number two, jail, 375,000. Number three, weed and pest for 37,490. And number four, for mountain pine beetle of 251,000, all from over-collected revenues received in 2013.
2013.
And what's the total?
And I'm sorry,
680.
for a total of 686,
542.
542.
Is there a second? I'll second it. Any further discussion? Do we want a roll call vote on this? If you would, please, Karen. Roll call.
No.
No.
Yes.
Yes.
Yes. Motion carried.
And I will, oh, go ahead, Tom.
Can I make a statement?
Yes.
All right. I don't, hopefully, the auditor's office and the other departments have gotten a message today as to what we need with these supplements.
I believe that message has always been out there for departments. I would speak for the auditor's office and for all as well. I would ask the board, because I understand that it's never the agenda item of supplements. And we've kind of gotten back and forth on, do we save them to the end of the year? Do we address them as the occasion arises, whether it's a non-budgeted need or revenue supported expense? Because we would gladly follow any direction that you would have.
Okay, I'll give you some direction. I'll give you some direction if I can butt in. As it relates to me, I want them at the end of the year, and then I want the explanation of where the revenues are coming from if you think you're going to support it by revenues, and I want a breakdown of which budget line items are in the negative as a result of this request, and you know, and if it was because of an example like the sheriff gave over his phone, have some explanation in there so we know why we're supplementing these budgets. That's the direction from me, and I don't know about the rest of the board.
I would agree, and that's the reason I voted no. I would like to see that report before we voted on this, but not that I disagree with any of them, but I don't know.
Same thing for me.
Okay. And that makes it, I mean, obviously, you know from the number there that we were on 16 with the public defender's request. We have supplement requests that come in right away after the beginning of the year from budgets that carry over for various things. And so it helps me to say to the department heads, the request from the board is that we wait till the end of the year and detail them all that. If there are specific things, more like if I use the example of the mountain pine beetle, we addressed it in March. We talked about all of those types of supplements. Would you like us to incorporate the motion so you don't have to revisit it again? Because we know that one was out there since March. So, we'll be glad to set it up the way that you like. It is frustrating and it's time consuming when we get to this piece of the meeting that we do every year at this time. And
well, Weed and Pest gave a pretty good explanation on theirs. They showed the revenue, they showed the expense that was going along with that, the contract for $251,000, where the revenues came from. The auditor's office, I don't have anything. The sheriff is he gave me some explanation here today, but that's what we don't have with this stuff.
And I understand that, Commissioner Holloway. My question was, on the ones that occur like that during the year, do you want us to save all of them till the end of the year?
I think we should wait until the end of the year, because what I've said from day one, if we don't need to make the supplement, then we shouldn't be making the supplement. So if they've got extra budget line or spending authority in their budget at the end of the year because of whatever might have happened, and they don't need that supplement, then we shouldn't be just supplementing it.
I know that when we prepared our budget document in about March or April, we had a number of reserves and supplements that we incorporated into motions for the board when we came to you at that meeting. And so we'll collect those requests as they come in after the first of the year and have them there, but we won't post any of them as supplements at that time. It would make a difference if at the end of any given year you decided to add to the equipment reserve for $100,000. You would want to know that as you were working through your budgeting process, because it's going to reduce the reserves at the end of the year. And we'll get with Holly's, because those reports are readily available out there.
Okay, let's move on to,
Mr. Chair,
yes.
could I respectfully ask that we bring the 4-H item up to this time in the meeting? And undoubtedly, we have a row of young ladies back there and people that need to get back to school. And I'm sure they wouldn't be here if they weren't all in school. So it'd sure be nice if we could get that done. And they're all sitting back there kind of going, looking at each other like, when are we going to get out of here?
You should ask them if they are in a hurry to get back to school.
I don't think that's a question that needs to be asked.
Do we need a motion to do that?
Holly, do you think you need a motion to bring that item up? Okay, I'd make a motion to move item 21 to the current time on the commission schedule.
Second.
Motion and a second. Any further discussion? If not, those in favor of the motion say aye.
Aye.
All right.
Opposed? Motion carried. You're on.
I'm Tiffany Meyer at Pennington County 4-H, and we're just here to give you our end-of-the-year review of all the activities we've done throughout the year and how 4-H has grown in Pennington County. Our county actually is being kind of put on the map as one of them that a lot of our programs are looked at statewide to do. Our dog program has actually been kind of mentoring other ones throughout different counties to get their dog programs even more. So it's kind of nice to know that we're on the map and it's in a positive way. So.
Apologies, this computer and I don't get along.
To the rescue.
I do too. If they need them signed, great, but they got to do it. But if it's just, if their budget approves, so they can do something else with it. Unless they would have to do any good reason for it. That's the other thing.
That's why I was against allowing any money left in anybody's budget to be transferred to any part of that budget to the extent to cover items in there, but they could overspend any item they wanted to, and I just don't like it. We changed that a few years ago just because of that, and now we're back to that.
Mr. Chair. Tiffany, are you going to introduce
Yeah, I can have them come up.
young ladies that?
My 4-Hers? Come and introduce yourself.
I'm Alicia McCarthy, and I'm in the Rushmore Riders Club. I'm a junior.
I'm Jessamy, and I'm from the Heavenly Vessels.
Hi, I'm Caitlin McCarthy, and I'm actually the 2013 and 2012 Pennington County Senior 4-H Rodeo Ambassador, and I'm from the Rushmore Riders 4-H Club.
I'm Michaela Stratmeyer, and I'm from the Heavenly Vessels.
I'm Brittany Stratmeyer, and I'm from the Heavenly Vessels.
one of our requirements for them to get one of their annual medals is that they have to come to a civic meeting and stuff. So that way they're coming and seeing what's happening in their community too. So I'm glad that they can come also, and they'll get that marked off their sheets. All right. Well, we have it on the screen now. Just got to get on the big one.
Want to borrow my hammer?
There we go. Yay. All right. Oh, something else popped up. Okay. So I'm giving our end of the year review. As we said, I'm hope to do this every year so you guys are kept in the loop on what we're happening in your county with your county funds also and how great the kids have been doing. So we increased enrollments again this year, which was great. We increased our 4-H projects that were exhibited at Fair. We had more promotional activities, and I'll go through those later. I continued with my after-school programs, one at North Rapid Middle School, and we have another one at Douglas Middle School doing Tech Wizards. And also I've been in the schools doing different things with them too. And then just finding new ways to innovate our office and to find easier ways to get out information out to our families and our leaders and people around the county. So these are the workshops we've done this year: the mesh wreath workshop, the livestock judging school, leather tooling with Tandy Leather. They came in and did it for free for us, which was great. Every year our 4-H dog club has a doggone weekend that they have an overnight, and then they also do a community service project up at the children's home that they bring their dogs up there and the kids can go through obstacle courses with them, and they just have a huge fun time with it. We're doing a crochet workshop. Actually, we have that scheduled now for December 30th on top of a jewelry making workshop we're going to be doing with it. And then I did a 4-week horse series where every Tuesday for 4 weeks we met up at the Rounds Arena or at the Bray Arena on the fairgrounds. Kids brought their horses in. We talked about etiquette. We talked about showmanship, horse judging, looking at different flaws, how to judge a horse properly, and then also our 2 youth in action events that are really big in the state are at Hippology and Quiz Bowl. And then we do our annual bread breaking that the kids enjoy every year. We do something different with that. And then to be in the horse project, you have to complete the youth horse safety and last year's nutrition. So these are just a few of our workshops: our bread making, our mesh wreath, and then our Tandy Leather one. So for our workshop ideas this year is over the Christmas vacation, we're going to be doing some workshops here. So one of them's the jewelry making, and then we're going to be doing the crochet in the morning. And then we're also hopefully doing a rocketry and a robotics one too. So we're trying to see if we can get that into the schedule. Our annual bread workshop, doing a sewing 101. A lot of kids are wanting to get back into the traditional projects. So sewing 101 is going to just kind of walk through the sewing machine, then also have them do like a pillowcase and then have them make 2 of them so we can donate one of them back to the mission. A photography workshop, also our annual youth horse safety, but this year it's selection and judging. Doing a livestock showing and / skillathon day, and I'll partner up with Custer since we go down and we show with Custer Fair with their livestock show. And then, of course, the rockets and robotics, jewelry making, and then also do another fall horse series. I like to do the fall horse series just because we're starting at the beginning of the year and the kids can actually work all year on their horse stuff that they need to work on to better themselves for the show. So these are our day camps that we had this year. We had the bicycle rodeo. Oops, sorry, that should say rodeo. We partnered with community members. The kids that came were from 6 to 10 years old. We had three city police officers come, and they talked about hand signals, stopping properly at stop signs, the different road signs that they need to know. We had 2-wheeler dealer come in. They checked all of the bikes, and then they made suggestions to parents on how to make the bikes last longer. And so, or just kind of things that might come up that they might need to fix later on. And then I had 2 guest speakers come in. We actually had rain that morning, so it was nice that we can have our 2 guest speakers inside in the big auditorium. So we did, one guy came in and talked about BMX and how to be safe with it, but then also the different tricks you can do. And then we had a person from the YMCA come and talk about the unicycle. So we maxed out at 35 youth just because I put a cap on it, just because bicycles and youth everywhere, 35 is a lot. So we maxed out at it, and I had 8 junior leaders helping, and then we included lunch that day. Same thing with the Survival 101. I kind of based it off of our Camp Bob Marshall This is just because for the kids that can't go to Camp Bob Marshall because they're too young. So we did first aid, orienteering is with the compasses, learning about, how to be able to use a compass properly, about different animal tracks, what happens. Search and Rescue came and did their Hug a Tree program about what happens if you get lost in the forest, things like that. And so we had 50 youth come that day, and then we had 7 junior leaders help that day. It was a fun time. And we also made the survival bracelets with the whistles, so that was great too. So that's just a few pictures of them. So my ideas for next year is to bring back my Get Wet camp. We haven't done that in a couple years. Is to teach conservation, why water is important, water purification, water safety. Probably bring back either Search and Rescue or the city fire department when they came and talked about how to be safe. I know a lot of times during the spring, we might have it this year where Rapid Creek might be really high, and I know it's good to have them be safe around it. And of course, at the end of it, we'll have a big water fight. So hopefully this year I can stay out of it, but we'll see. So also, I actually had a father just sign up his little clover bed that he used to be the West District forensic photographer. And so he was really excited about having the day camp that we can probably do some CSI stuff and things like that. So teaching him about photography, a little bit about it. He actually was also into entomology, determining which bugs are on the bodies for so long and things like that. So we kind of talked to him a little bit about that, bring up fingerprinting. I was going to plan on hoping and talking to sheriff to see if we can come and see the, having some of his guys come and talk a little bit. It's also we want to talk about careers for these kids at a young age. And so that will help out with that. And then also seeing if maybe the evidence building, we can come and just see a few things and have a little field trip that day. So we have Camp Bob Marshall every year. Our 2013 theme was survival. This year it's going to be about science. It's open to both 4-H and non-4-H youth, and about 80% of my youth that actually came were non-4-H. So it was great because then we sent things out to them this fall saying, come and be in 4-H, and we actually had quite a few of them actually sign up. So it's a great time. This is the bucket brigade thing that we had. The Custer Fire Department brought it in, and they had to take water and act like they were throwing water up on the thing, and just lots of people, a lot of wetness. And then we had the Custer State Park came in and talked about survival gear, orienteering, basic things, shelter building if they're out there, things like that. So lots of fun. It's 4 days up at Camp Bob Marshall up in Custer State Park. Our Youth in Action we have every year. We're growing even more. 5 counties, because it's a regional one I like to bring on, so it just brings people here to us. So we do our special foods, our fashion review, our public presentation, and our consumer decision-making judging. This year, I'll also be doing one in May, my annual one, but then I'm also be going out to Wall, too, to catch some of those kids that are just hard for them to get on that weekend, because that's rodeo starting weekend, so I want to try to catch them in March when they're not in school. So I'll be going out there doing public presentations and get their judging requirements done for the year. So State Horse, we had a great time there. Emily Johnson's up in the top picture. She took Grand and Beginner Hunt Seat Equitation. And then our hippology team took first place for the state. So we'll be going to Denver Stock Show here in January for them to compete at the national level. So they've been busy trying to fundraise and get their time down there. So it's been great. And they've been working every week since pretty much September or even August. We've been working since August on weekly practices. So they are ready to go for it in January.
As a town boy, what's hippology?
Hippology, you don't need to have a horse for it. What it is, the Youth in Action events, so their hippology and quiz bowl is that they're teaching them, or it's making them learn ask anything and everything about the horse industry. We can ask them any questions, so about breeds, markings, vet materials, tapeworms, anything and everything. And so they have to do a test, judge horses, also do a team problem, which they're given like a scenario saying you have 5 horses and 10 acres and this much, grass on it. How long are you going to keep them on there? How are you going to supplement them for the year? This is your budget type of deal. And then also they have to do a slideshow where they're given 2 minutes and stations that they're given 2 minutes on each one, and they have to write down each one of the answers to what they're doing. Like kind of a matching almost time of deal. like we said, Katie's here, one of our ambassadors, but we also have another one, Riley Smith from the Rushmore Riders. She took the South Dakota State 4-H Rodeo Ambassador. So we have two awesome people going around and really promoting 4-H here in Pennington County. So it's great to have both of them here. So to be a rodeo ambassador, you have to earn it through impromptu speech, horsemanship, and there's also silent judges that are with you at all times. And so even if you're just sitting there, they're watching how your attitude is, how you're speaking to people, you know, just everything in general of your personality. So it's not easy to get. So this is what our growth was this year. We went up 10 kids, which is about what we kind of usually want. We've actually are probably even going up even more from even just the first 2 months of when we've opened up our new year. I've had at least another 30 kids that have signed on to be 4-H members. So, and we still are not done. We could sign up until May 31st. We had 133 exhibitors come and do their exhibits at fair, which we are down a little bit last year, but when you average out how many exhibits they actually brought more exhibits than they brought last year. So, our quality exhibits and our quantity exhibits come into fair and the state fair or more. So with horse, we had 2,006 pre-registered exhibits. Without horse, 1,913. And then for purples, we had 529. Blues were 405. Reds are 123, and whites were 13. So, and we had 15 cloverbuds come, and they exhibited 57 different exhibits, and it averaged about 4 exhibits per cloverbud. So they come, they have to sit down with the judge too, and then they get their ribbons at the end. One kid brought like 13 different exhibits, so he was there for quite a while, and he was a talker. So
How old was he?
He was 7.
Oh my.
Yep. So he'll be 4-H age this year, so he's pretty excited about that he can finally get the purple, blue, red, and white ribbons. So these are just a few pictures of our achievement days. Our horse show is classified as an achievement day, even though that's back in June. We have our dog show that's in July, and then we start with Custer show the first weekend of August, and then we have a cat show, which I had 17 cats at, and then I had a rabbit show, and then we had actually a pocket pet show along with our poultry show, and I had 2 turtles and a raccoon come. So that was fun to have a raccoon in the poultry barn during fair. You should have seen everybody over there. So she was on a leash, no worries. And actually her best friend at home is a chicken, which is quite comical. So, and then just our interview times and our fashion review that we have. So it's a very busy season, that's for sure, for the month of August. So just ways that we promoted 4-H. We're always promoting 4-H through Black Hill Stock Show Youth Day. I also do, it's called Kids Take Stock, where they bring in all the elementary schools from around a 100-mile radius that they are invited to come to stock show time, and we actually have educational things for them to go and learn about. They rotate through like 6 different stations doing agriculture. Last year I taught them about goats and the different types of goats and things like that. So every year, our dog group does responsible dog ownership, where they invite the public in. They talk about how to be a responsible dog owner, training. They bring in guest speakers, things like that. Scare in the Square, my hippology girls came and they handed out trick-or-treat bags down there. We also do promoting. I promoted at Lifeways this last year to our summer activities to get kids more involved in other things than just, drugs and alcohol and things like synthetic drugs that they were talking about that day. I've been a guest speaker on the Kim radio. We've had articles in the journal. We always go and have one club do Tractor Supply Clover Days during their time. We're always continually out there. Every club is actually supposed to do community service, so they're all out there doing something one way or another. And then we've had our booths when RCC turned to Boot Barn. We were there. We had a table to promote 4-H during their time too. So that's just a few of the stuff we've done. Oh, the one up on the top was a group that they went and did the Care and Sharing Day, where they went around with the Boy Scouts and picked up all of the canned goods from people that left them out on that special bag. So that was what they have. So, and then we had another group that did a car wash, and they took the money to the Humane Society. So to give that back to them. State Fair. The 2 pictures here were classified as judges' choices, the flower and the picture of the waterfall type deal. What it is that they got picked to be in the calendar for the 2014, and actually the picture is the very front page. So it's the front of the calendar, so it's pretty cool. I had 2 girls that come and did fashion review there. That's Maxine Howe and her prom dress that she made herself. That's all completely constructed that she did. So I had 3 girls do the cat show at State Fair. I had 3 of them do the poultry. I had 2 goats that went, and then that is our whole section of just everything but photography at fair. So I actually quite grew. I had to take over another county's part. So I'm still going to the juvenile service. I actually start again on Thursday. This year's our 2nd year of doing it. We're also going to be starting in January our Robotics 2 program because some of the kids that have been through my program are still there. And so we're just going to do a little bit more advanced things for them to do with the robotics so they can come and do another 4 weeks with me. We meet 4 times for an hour and a half on Thursdays. And they have to have good behavior to come. And then I also score them for give them a 1, 2, or 3. So they also get those behavior points too. So it's all about, we're teaching about problem solving, utilizing every step to the complete mission, and then just about engineering in itself and talk about careers and things like that too. So my monthly Cloverbud program, I'll have another one tomorrow. We're actually going to be doing cards to send off to soldiers for Christmas. So, but we have it every first Wednesday of the month. I try to do an activity that they can bring to fair with them, so they already have something done and they don't have to worry about it. And it's just a lot of fun. We have an average between 4 to 8 kids that come, and we're growing more this year. So it's a lot of work for the 5 to 7-year-olds for an hour even. So we are actually being very innovative this year. Some of the things that I am looking into the future and what I'm going to be doing is podcasts. And so what this is that I will put up like a YouTube link for Pennington County on our website. Families could come, I'll have one up for just how to re-enroll because some people are more visual than just the help sheets. How to, complete the record books correctly. I have kids that are excellent in their projects, so one of their requirements that they have to do a workshop, and a lot of them are pretty shy around people in that kind of a big setting. So this way I can videotape them giving their workshop, and I can post it so anybody can use it anytime. So how to bathe and show your poultry, how to show your cat, how to, instead of doing the mesh wreath workshop every year, let's do the mesh wreath up on the podcast so people can do it if they want to, look at that kind of stuff. So. This year we also did leader binders. The leaders came to us, the Pennington County Leaders Association. They paid for the binders and said we need to find a new way to make this easier. So we had such turnover in our office and just new era that we are putting together everything that they would need for the year at the beginning of the year. So things that even kids should be doing throughout the year that we would give them at the end of the year didn't make quite a lot of sense. So now we're giving it to them at the beginning of it. They're handing it out to their kids, just making it a little bit easier on everybody. So it has so far worked very well, and then we'll add to it as we're going for things that we need to update. So we're just trying to overall just streamline the whole process of the 4-H office and leaders and everything. We're just trying to be more efficient, be able to get things out to people more quickly. Have families understand things a little bit easier. Get the achievement days down to a certain process where it's not such a jumble at the beginning of it or kids don't understand where to go. We have all that kind of together. Get the recognition stuff out at the beginning of the year so the end of the year when they need it. Just trying to better plan and better organize. It's a new era in our office, so we had lots of turnover. We have 2 FNET people in it, and we have a new administrative assistant, and we'll have a new halftime person. So we're just trying to make it, just new, and it's a new way 4-H is done. So we're just trying to make it grow and fit Pennington County. So for my goals for this next year is increase membership between 2 to 3%, program more at the Wall and Hill City Libraries. I'm also going to be at the first part of the year talk to Hill City Boys and Girls Club to see if I can come in and do a monthly thing with them too, or what they would like me to do. Continue communication with you guys. Increase traffic throughout the 4-H fair building during the fair, which I would have is like little day workshops. So have like small acreage management come in one day and teach about that. So it's bringing adults in too, and people that are wanting to learn more about it, have a canning workshop, things like that. So strive for youth to excel towards state and national level competitions. So just have them more prepared, give them more of the information that they need, have more practices for them. And then increase my junior leader involvement, which I try doing every year throughout the county. So more day workshops, Camp Bob Marshall, chaperones, things like that. So do more community service workshops with them as a whole. So thank you again for your guys' support. Is there any questions?
How do you find the time to do all that?
I don't know, to be honest with you. And I even had a husband deployed and pretty much a new baby. So it was a fun time this year. But I wouldn't trade it for anything. That's why I love 4-H, and this is why I went into it. So I like to see these guys excel. So even in the matter of the 3 years I've been here, it's been a big difference with seeing them. So
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
You guys have a great day.
Thank you very much. Okay, we'll move back. Is KJ here?
There she is.
KJ, you're on again. We'll go back to.
I believe we're at item C, winter storm.
19C, yes.
Perhaps Dustin would be here.
Another one I don't like.
I put this, well, I was going to say kind of short memo together. Sometimes I don't want to get too wordy, but I do want to provide you with the information you need. Obviously, there's been a number of commission meetings regarding the discussions of the storm and the funding that will be coming from FEMA. I believe about 2 weeks ago, Dustin sent out the resolution from the governor's office. And so now that we're closing in on about 2 months from that storm date, a large amount of the expenses have been paid. We, as of November 30th, had spent $278,279 out of the Storm Atlas budget that we put together right away, like the Monday after the storm, when we were meeting with some of the emergency management people, and they'd brought in some people from Sioux Falls, and we've dealt with a number of these kinds of situations in the past, and the overtime and expenses were charged out to the designated budget for maybe sheriff, buildings and grounds, IT, along with obviously emergency management. So we put a budget together right away so that we could account for all the expenses in one place and not have to go in and dig them out of each individual budget, because that's difficult. We've done that in the past, and there's a lot of required documentation that they, of course, want in order to reimburse us. The estimated 85% of the expenses. So we put those together, the 278, 279. We did leave some of the expenses over in highway because they have a cost accounting system and it was easy to identify it there. We left them there. And we have expected bills yet to come in December for $85,000 approximately, and $55,291. The $55,291 is primarily that contract that was approved several meetings ago. So basically, we're expecting the total expenses to be at about $533,978. It will vary a little bit. So as we proceed with supplementing this budget, which does not require us to post a hearing per the statute, SDCL 72121. I brought it, that basically says when you have a catastrophic event, the board can supplement without posting a hearing. So I rounded that up for purposes of the supplement to $550,000 total. The expenses in the highway actually don't need to be supplemented. That being because there is enough 2013 spending authority, primarily the new Underwood shop budget that was included in the approved budget. Most of those expenses are going to occur in 2014. So we won't need to do that motion supplement. We will account for the expenses there and ultimately have these two budgets that we can look at. That will be where we submit all of the requests. Dustin's been to one meeting. I know he's got us scheduled for another one, accounting-wise. What it boils down to is basically of that total expense that we expect to incur, assuming we get the 85%. There's a little bit of fluctuation. We get to count things like volunteer hours that aren't going to be actual dollars, but we'll be able to account for them, so that will make the amount that we actually need from county funds perhaps to be slightly less. We don't have all those numbers yet, and should have them by the end of the year, where we basically will do what we do in every department. Accounting-wise, we properly have to supplement it, account for the expenses in the proper year, account for the anticipated revenue that will come back in that same year. So we will book it all into 2013. And we anticipate approximately $82,500 of the expenses related to the storm will not be covered by revenues, and will need to be funded by county funds. There's a number of options the board can use in looking at paying for that. That reserve that we anticipate at the end of this year to be approximately 20%. The contingency currently has about $90,000 in it. We will have to do a small supplement or contingency transfer for insurance, I think about $6,000. There's $299,000 currently remaining in the County Emergency Disaster Fund. That is the fund that we have not levied in that fund for many years. The board utilized some of the available cash, I think about $80,000 earlier this year to help with the mountain pine beetle issue. So obviously there's more than enough with a balance of $299,000 in that fund to account for the county's portion. I'm really not asking necessarily for any motion today from the board. I wanted to be able to give you this information so you could look at it, ask me questions today, ask me questions throughout perhaps the next 2 weeks, so that at the final meeting of the year, the two motions I will ultimately need will be the motion to supplement the budget without a hearing, and a motion to determine the county's portion of the funding. And if the funding were to come from another fund like the emergency disaster, the proper motion then would be an operating transfer to emergency management for that. I think that Dustin indicated to me that he hoped we would see those revenues back in our coffers by early spring to early summer. During that period of time, there will be a small amount of cash flow in the emergency management fund where we've been paying the bills. But I think we're going to be okay with that. You know, we'll be using money now and getting the revenue back from FEMA and the state later in the spring or early summer.
Mr. Chair, I think I would make a motion to postpone this until the December 17th meeting, put it back on the agenda so we can be sure and have the biggest majority of the bills.
Yes,
to
we
take
will
care
have
of.
the December vouchers in by then.
Mr. Chairman.
Is there a second to the motion?
Do we need a motion? You said you didn't expect a motion today anyway.
No. I don't need a
Whatever needs to be
motion.
done. I just think we need to continue to make sure we have the biggest majority of them.
Okay, I think we can do that without a motion.
Okay.
Commissioner Busker.
When you say here there will not need to be a supplement to the county highway budget, because he's going to use some money that was originally planned for the New Underwood shop, but he's not going to use it this year. But if we don't supplement next year, we will end up giving him back, or giving him that money again.
Well, it's not the money, it's the approved budget, it's the spending authority. So I do not, and I don't know if Heine is anticipating, because a good majority of his New Underwood shop costs are now going to occur in 2014, if he will request a supplement at the end of the year, I would assume, and by then, things can change, and just as it's a perfect example. In 2012, as he's working his budget, he's including that expense for the New Underwood shop, which has just been on the agenda in the last few weeks for approval, and the majority of the work is all going to occur in 2014. So this expense is kind of rolled forward. We don't need to supplement in 2013 for the non-budgeted expenses for the storm, because he doesn't need that spending authority.
And if we do that, then we can deduct that from the 550,000, so we end up with 375,000. And if we are, if we pay then 15% of that, maybe I'm going down.
Well, even though they're in two funds, we'll still, we'll take the total expense for the storm from the combined two budgets they were charged to, the emergency management storm atlas budget that we built on the 5th of October, and the highway budget, and we'll submit all the required documentation that they need for the entire expenses, including documentation for volunteer work that really didn't cost us out of our budget dollars, but that we can use in the request for reimbursement, and you come up with the total. That's what I'm saying. That's estimated to be 85%. They can look at an expense and say, we're not going to approve that. That, as I understand it, there'll be auditor-type people coming in and looking at all the expenses. So at the end of the day, when we have accounted for all the expenses and submitted a request for the entire amount, it's not necessarily going to be true that we're going to get exactly 85% of that back in revenue. That number's going to vary a little bit.
Mr. Chair.
Yes, Mr. Albright.
Couple of things, KJ. Could we get a itemization of what expenses were charged to the emergency storm budget, as well as what the county highway department is listing as expenses from his department? Secondly, you'd mentioned overtime. Is regular hourly salaries included in those expenses?
Yes, they are.
And those were salaries that we had already had in the 2013 budget.
Budgets. That's correct.
So if they're charged to this special account, then they're not charged to the other account.
Right.
Can we do the supplement out of those individual budgets into this Atlas budget?
What we did right now was we charged all of the hours related to the storm, both regular and overtime, to the Storm Atlas budget. That's where they sit right now.
Right, and I understand that, but now we're wanting to supplement, we're wanting to give some spending authority or some money, put some money in that.
Oh, I see what you're saying. So you're saying because of the savings, for instance, in the
Sure,
general
take it out of
fund.
the budget where we budgeted for, rather than going to the general fund dollars or the emergency disaster dollars.
Well, you would actually end up supplementing from the general fund, unassigned fund balance, because what would happen would be those dollars would not be spent at the end of the year.
I'd like to identify what those are, if we could.
A good portion of the expenses in the Fund 226 are salaries.
Okay, and then.
But a lot of it is overtime.
Okay.
And we have a detailed report. That's why we did it that way, so we could see it all in one budget and not have to go to the sheriff's and try and extract out his hours and everyone's hours, so.
I understand that. And so it should be easier for you to put this report together than for us to. The other thing is, you're saying that we can report volunteer hours and actually ask the federal government to reimburse us for those dollars to support that volunteer that we never paid?
The way I understand it from Dustin is the many, many volunteer hours that were given during the storm qualify for the FEMA reimbursement, even though that they were not an expenditure.
Okay, I'd like to know what those hours are, because frankly, I don't think that here's where I'm at with us running to the federal government to help pay for our expenses that we've had budgeted for, and it just frankly is our responsibility for our own community. And I know we might be unique as a community in looking at it this way, if in fact a couple of other people up here might agree with me. We would probably be unique in that respect, that New Jersey and everywhere else that has a little disaster that happens expects the federal government to come in and bail them out all the time. So my thought is, we identify which is truly up and above what we had budgeted for. That's what we should be asking for assistance, if in fact we need that assistance. If it's a small number, then maybe we can cover it out of our contingency. We don't have to run to the federal government or the state government and ask them for more money. So I would like to see that, and I'd like to get it early enough before the next meeting to have a chance to digest it a little bit, and then maybe go talk to whoever's expenses those were that are charged to that budget, whether it be the sheriff, the highway department, or emergency management, or whoever. And then the last question I got for you is, doesn't emergency management have a cash reserve?
They do have some cash reserve as well.
Is that something that's available for expenditures, to cover some of these expenditures, their cash reserves? How much is in that cash reserve?
I can't tell you, because it's all one big number for me, and there are inside that some identified amounts. But between Dustin, I can tell you what the fund balance is estimated to be at the end of the year easily. I just need to get with Dustin to identify if inside that there's some pandemic flu money or things like that.
If you could do that, I'd appreciate it. And then I didn't quite understand your comment here. It says some adjustments, we will have to have some adjustments made in 2014 when all the expenses are eligible for reimbursement. The cash flow in the emergency management fund will drop as we account for all the expenses and wait for the reimbursement. But aren't we doing that in this is 2013. Yes. We're taking care of these expenses now. What's that have to do with the 2014 budget?
I think I used the wrong year because you're right. The expenses are all happening right now. The bulk of them have already been paid, a few more. And so the cash in that fund, it is much smaller than the true fund balance, because when you report that expected receivable, whatever it is, whether it's the full amount that we make the assumption of the 85% or just what we need, that amount is what will go back in and replenish both that fund.
Okay.
And that's what's, the fact that he does have some cash reserves is what's making us be able to do that right now.
I see. All right, thank you.
Mr. Chair.
I think when I used 2014, Commissioner Holloway, I was identifying that probably until about the last week in January, when we've accounted for all the expenses and reported the outstanding revenues, including the reimbursement for the storm and all of his other outstanding receivables, we'll be working,
It'll still be the 2013
we
budget.
account
but
for
we'll
it in
just be
2013 and look at the fund balance that way, which can be different from where we're at on the cash flow itself.
Thank you.
Mr. Chair.
Yes.
I think it would be really beneficial to have Dustin here at the next meeting as we discuss this, because, while I get what Don's saying, I would hate to make a decision to not ask for that money and jeopardize some entity that lost a lot during, I think we need to make sure we understand the whole program before we would decide to ask for less. And I agree that I think we're unique that we could do that. We are careful with our money. We are an example of how to handle the taxpayers' money, but I do believe that we need to make sure that if we make a decision like that, we're not jeopardizing something for someone else.
Well, I can easily get you the detailed budgets. I can get you those right away. I'm headed out to Pierce, so I'll get those to you yet today through November, and then we can update it closer to the meeting, which is when the December vouchers would be approved, and by then we could see those numbers included in them. And I'm sure that as far as the I know that Chris from Highway has a detailed report of the expenses she's been accounting for and yet to come as well. So other than that, I'll get with Dustin on the volunteers, and we'll try and get you that information between all of us this week, and then there'll be more information that will probably arrive in the packet.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions on this issue? If not, we'll move on to item D.
Item D is a request for $6,000 from contingency. We received the property renewal bill last week. Continuing with Harleysville, the property rates for 2013 actually are 9% less than they were last year, but of course we have more property, so our bill actually is up approximately $20,000. The 2013 insurance budget has enough to pay that right almost to the penny, but we do have one remaining quarterly unemployment bill that will come in early January, and we'll charge that back. That bill, depending on how many claims we have, can run anywhere between $2,300. Worst case scenario, about $9,000. So we're requesting the board approve a general fund contingency transfer for $6,000 to the insurance budget.
Any questions or comments?
Mr. Chair? KJ, maybe you can probably answer this question for me. On the on the letter from First Western Insurance,
Mhm.
lab and evidence building, does the city pay a share of that? since
Yes,
they
we-
are okay.
we bill-
Do you know what the percentage is, or right
Uh,
offhand?
Did I include the second page? The portion for the lab and evidence building is 6,116. We also break it down and charge back to JSC for the compact. That's 9821. But the money that comes from the city comes in as revenue. The expense,
Okay.
I actually,
I got you. Thank you.
Any other comments?
I'd make a motion to approve the general fund contingency transfer in the amount of $6,000 to the general fund insurance budget.
Second.
Motion and a second. Any further discussion?
Oops.
Hearing none, those in favor of the motion say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried. Item E.
Item E is a public hearing for a retail on-off sale wine license for the Black Forest Inn Bed and Breakfast. It has been advertised and reviewed by the sheriff's office, and as I understand it, there's no concerns.
Mr. Chair?
Yes.
I'd make a motion to approve the new license request and license renewal request as presented by the sheriff's office.
Motion and a second. Any further discussion? Hearing none, those in favor of the motion say aye.
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 Opposed? Motion carried. Next item is item F.
We're bringing this item to the board as we prepare to get ready for 2014. We always request the merit list from the departments. January and July being the months of the year that those recommendations come. During the budget preparation for 2014, the wage scale that previously had the second step in, which we called the B step, was approved to work towards going back to just a straight A through R. And now we're moving into Springbrook, and we're going to have to start thinking in numbers. So we're all doing that math in our head from that. The end result was that everyone knew that there would be some inequities when we reached the point where it was time to prepare and recommend. Some employees would only be moving off the B step and get the 1%. Others would have never gone on to one and would not then go, they'd move the full 2.5% that merit raises are when on the wage scale. And the departments prepared their budgets accordingly with that direction that was approved for that. The only thing that kind of became significant as we just started requesting these is the new hires in the last 2 years. Because new hires are, in accordance with the wage scale, eligible to move after 6 months. After that, employees can only move once a year. So we have employees all the way back to as far as the period between January and June of 2012 who may have come in, may have moved to the B step and would now only be able to go to the 1%. And we'll have employees who came in late 2012 and early 2013 have met their 6 months and are now eligible to go from probably A, where they were hired in, to B. So we kind of did this little chart for you to try to make it clear. It is confusing. Just to outline that we do have some differences with those new hires in the last 2 years. And every department head may have a different thought on how they're going to do that. And we always bring anything that's an exception to the policy to the board. So if someone moved someone to a B step, we would tell them we're not doing that. they're not eligible. Some employees could be making more money and worked here less. So that's what the chart outlines for you, and not that we are advocating one way or the other, just asking perhaps for some direction from the board. Julie outlined 4 options. The first one being to grant no exceptions to the current wage policy, which would basically mean that probably some people would either not get their 6-month merit raise until 12 months, to allow the department heads to advance an employee up to 2 steps in January and July to resolve that problem. There's approximately 54 employees hired between January 2013 and June that would have to wait until July. Her fourth option is the same approximate amount of new hires from July of this year to December, that they can have their second merit 6 months earlier. Very complicated. I will say that I know that the board, we talked about this during budget, and we clearly identified that there would be people who would not everybody's going to be getting the same amount of merit this year. In order for us to resolve working out of that wage scale with that additional step in it.
Mr. Chair, KJ, you mentioned that there could be some employees who wouldn't get their 6-month merit pay. They'd have to wait for 12 months. Tell me where that would come into play.
If you had an employee who was eligible at
6 months.
6 months, they would go from A to B.
Right.
And if you had an employee who received a merit at their 6 months and is now at AB, they would go from AB to B. So you would have both the employee who's worked here for a year at B in January 2014.
And the one that's been here 6 months.
And so some departments heads.
But that happens even on the other scenario. You can have an employee who's been here 11 months. He starts in February.
Exactly.
He doesn't have his 6 months in July. He can't get the raise. So now he goes to the end of the year and he gets it after 11 months.
Mm-hmm.
Do you get another employee who starts in May and come to the end of the year, he's already got his 6 months in, maybe he's got 7 months in, and he gets the raise. I mean, so that's always been the scenario?
Yes,
Right?
because we don't do it when you hit your 6 months. We do it in January or July.
So you always run into the scenario where some people have more time on than somebody else, but they're making the same money. And I think that's what's going to happen here again. Come July of 2014, we're going to be out of the half-step process.
I hope so. If there may be a few, because not everybody gets a merit raise, and maybe somebody moved to a B step and now they're waiting and they don't go. But I think a large majority of the people that are sitting on that half step, then 1.5 step, will move out of it. And you're right. Our point, I guess, from the auditor's office is that we would clearly audit in straight accordance with the wage scale of the 6 months, which then some departments are saying, do we wait until July to move the employee who came to work in June so that we keep the balance in? And that's not our direction to give, obviously.
If I may.
Yes, you may.
Thank you. Don, I think the thing that, and I wanted to thank Julie for putting this together because this is how I learned, so this makes it easier for me. The one thing that we'll always have that situation, but the situation we won't have is using the names here. The third name down, Molly, could have potentially been hired 364 days later than John, but she would get a merit 6 months earlier than him.
No, see,
Could.
Hold it.
Could.
Or and it's a great discussion. We are not giving out merit increases. Let's be honest. We can call them merits, they are longevity increases, because that's all you're talking about is longevity, how long they've been here. Not whether they're worth the money, how long have you been here?
I disagree personally.
And not that I'm against that, I'm just saying, you know, if we're gonna be honest, let's call it what it is.
But we have department heads who take it very seriously and elected officials who are very strict with their merits, and there are others that treat it as longevity pay. This is just, Julie wasn't able to be here, but she just wanted to point this out to the board, but again, wasn't recommending it, just wanted to point this out.
What do you think? You're the one that did this, your whole career over there.
Any other comments or questions? Earlier, we took action to help consolidate the effort that goes into the payroll, did we not?
Yeah, how we pay, yes.
Yes.
Does this fit into the transition in any way?
No.
So none of these options necessarily would represent any particular efficiency in the process?
No.
Not in the process we discussed earlier, no.
2.5%.
See, and then we're going to half steps.
But we're not talking.
I don't know if any other department heads maybe have some thoughts on this. Appreciate anything.
Kevin Tone, Pennington County Sheriff. When we looked at it internally, we chose option number 4 just because it put everybody on the same page then and got them to I guess, kind of an equal starting point. And I don't have my timeline in front of me, but there are some people that have been there for almost 18 months, making the same pay as people today. And then people that get the merit and they don't will leapfrog ahead of them for 6 months. And this would be a one-time fix to that. And you're right. Commissioner Holloway pointed out, you're always going to have a little bit of that leapfrogging. But right now, there's some additional disparity created because there wasn't merit and COLA last year or year before.
No, there was just the 1.5% merit, and now we're back to 2.5% merit in 2014.
So we would support option 4.
Any other comments?
Janet Saylor, Pennington County Treasurer. I understand what Kevin's saying, but if you look at the fact there's people that have been here for a year or 16 months, that there's people that have just been here 6 months or a year. If those people don't merit a raise, they're not going to get a raise. So the newer people are going to get up to B or C maybe before the person that's been here for 2 years. If you're just doing enough to get by, and quite frankly, as far as my office, I didn't put it in the budget. I mean, I haven't penciled it out to see how much money it's going to affect us one way or the other. But I think if you're going to do it, you need to do it across the board. Don't single departments out and say, okay, this department can do it, that department can do it. If you're going to do it across the board so it's fair to every employee in Pennington County.
Mr. Chairman, KJ, is there a way to figure if we go with any of these options, how much that's going to cost?
Well,
Is that really difficult to do?
we've identified the number of new hires, 54 in January to June and 53 in July 2012 to December. The other periods, we were right at about 180. The others weren't quite that, the other quarters weren't that high. So the difference is basically a 2.5% step.
For 53 people, if you go with the sheriff's option 4.
And of course, these people are entry-level positions. This is just addressing those.
And of course, not all 53 may deserve and merit.
That's correct.
Right. I don't care. I'm gonna lose this battle anyway.
Do we have a motion?
Oh, we got a couple more people want to talk to us.
Oh, okay.
I guess I would support option 4 too. I basically submitted our merit increases and I got some of my employees, they're gonna wait a year and a half. And the whole fiasco is when you split the merit to A, B step and then B, C, it just ruined the whole system. But I cannot see giving an employee a merit in 6 months and have him being paid as much as one that's been there a year and a half. So I made the decision that nobody's getting one in 6 months, but just to keep peace within my group because they talk, and that's one of the reasons you did the hourly deal, because somebody that's getting paid by the hour and this month he gets 200 hours, his check is $100 more than the other guy, and they start coming in asking questions and they don't know why, and would be the same thing, and all it does is destroy morale. And I guess I would go with the sheriff and say, and when you're talking about two merit steps, it's not the full 2 steps, because that person is stuck in that half step, and that's what we're trying to clean up. So I would support number 4.
I crossed out 2. I think it's about.
It is morning. Good morning. Donna Meyer, Pennington County Register of Deeds. I'm going to throw a loop. I'm going for option number 2. I have 5 new employees over there. The one that is the oldest of the newest, she missed a merit because we didn't do a merit one year. Then we went to this half step. So then when I move up my new people, they are going to be right on top of her or right. Yeah, are going to be right on top of her. So to me, those, if there are a couple, if I feel that they merit it, I would like to have the option, if possible, I would go for option number 2, for 2 steps. So.
Would you like to see that forever? So we always give
No.
people 2 merits?
No.
Just one time?
No, unless we really mess,
Pause.
unless we really mess up again. So, no, just a one-time deal, please.
Mr. Chair,
Yes.
I just got to say this. I know that we are all griping about that 1.5, but really, if I remember how that went in the budgeting process that year, it came very close to no increase. And the 1.5, I'm kind of disappointed that everybody's griping about it so much. I really am.
I understand.
It
You
makes
are
me
right.
feel like we shouldn't have given you anything, to be quite honest. And you know that I'm normally not that way with employees.
And I think that if we go back to when the 1.5%, it was like, well, the general
a
consensus was,
compromise.
we're glad we got a partial step.
Yeah, but sure, everybody's griping about it today.
So, being relatively new to the inner workings here, Heine made a remark about the half step messing things up. Is this 1.5 what you call the half step?
We call it the B step because we had always had a wage scale that ran numerically from A to R with 2.5% steps. And in the 2013, we implemented that half step or B step, which was a 1.5%. So the majority of the employees getting a merit raise in 2014 will move off of that half step, get a 1% merit raise, and go to back to the step, to the A through R step with no
Was
middle.
the half step an action by the commission?
It was incorporated into the 2012, gosh, what year are we? Yeah, the 2013 budget, because a 2.5% was pretty much not going to happen, and so they worked. That was a tumultuous budget year, as I recall. It was lengthy. Not that any budget year should and always will be tumultuous, but the solution at the time by the board was incorporating that half step. And so now incorporating it out is causing a few quirks. And as they initially, almost immediately started to, we sent out the requests so we can have time to audit those, and we get the list ready. We'll apply the COLA, and that list has to be in the annual salary listing in the first meeting of the year. So timing-wise, we've asked for that, and this question came up immediately after sending it out, and certainly wasn't something that the auditor's office could give direction on.
I guess I'm still a little puzzled. Was the 2.5% so automatic from year to year that it became a part of the structure of the salary policy?
Yes, because the wage scale was created with 2.5% merit increments from A to R.
And Commissioner Peterson, it wasn't necessarily an automatic raise, but it was, if there was a merit going to be given, then it was based upon that 2.5% increments. And that had been in place, I don't know how long.
Many years.
Years, yep.
So
Prior to that, people just got hired wherever the department had elected to pay them, and whenever they elected to give them a raise. So other than COLA, there wasn't a uniform wage scale and a job matrix that is for all county employees.
Well, I guess I have more questions, but I don't think there's any point in pursuing them here. But it strikes me that, going back to Commissioner Buskerud's remarks, is it merit pay or is it longevity pay? And maybe we can challenge our HR director to explore that a little bit, so we kind of make sense out of what we're doing, or what's being done. Russ, you were...
Russ Tinsvold, IT Director for Pennington County. I just wanted to let you know that for my little department, which is only about a dozen people, we are very appreciative of any raise ever given. And the fact is, none of my people are going to leave if you said this year there's no raises. But it would be disappointing because, when we hire people, one of the questions people ask is, how do you measure success? Do you get raises? How is it determined, et cetera? We have to have an answer for them. And in the past, it was a little bit simpler in that here's a cost of living increase. If it's given, it's this amount. Here's a merit increase. That's the term that's used. If it's given. And so it makes it a little bit clearer when somebody's trying to decide if they should come to Pennington County. Some of the changes that were made last year just make it a little bit harder for us to give them some direction as far as what's the pay structure look like here going down the road. So I'm an advocate of going back to something like you were doing before. I don't have a preference on which of those options. You guys can figure that out. My employees will be happy with whatever you do, and they're very appreciative. If they didn't like it here, they would have left. The last thing I would say is I just hope that we don't change calling it a merit raise to calling it a longevity raise, even though that might be what it is. As a director, I can use that as a tool to increase employee performance if we need to. In fact, at least one of my employees did not get a merit raise last year. And that was a tool that I used as a manager. If we switched it and just called it a longevity raise, I'm afraid I would lose that tool. Maybe neither of those is the right term, but I don't know. I'm not quite sure what the right term is for that. But just wanted to let you know that we are appreciative, and I'm certain that you'll do what's best for the employees. And and provide me with the tools I need to hire and keep good people.
Thank you. Heidi?
I was just gonna address your question about longevity pay. I happen to be sitting on the committee that helped get our current policy in place as far as wages and what's a job worth. And the county used to have longevity pay. And as Russ just said, just because you were here a full year and now you got some more longevity pay, there was no way the department head could go in and say, no, I'm not giving you longevity because your job performance is bad. So we basically got rid of longevity, took it away, put this scale in place, so now the department heads can evaluate the employee and decide if he's not worth it, he's not gonna get it. It gives us a tool to improve performance of an employee. So that's why we went away from longevity to merit.
I respect that, and I've been in multiple employee situations myself over time, and sometimes the longer you were there, the less you did. And so, I know.
I'm not sure how to take that question.
What do you need today?
He needs to.
Well, in order to proceed with just doing the audit with the merit raises that are coming in, I would request identifying one or more or all options be made available to the department heads, so that I can properly, I mean, and I say that because we've heard from one that said I would like 2, and we've heard from several that indicated 4 seems to be the best. We've heard from department heads saying we use this as the tool to determine merit, so perhaps you want to give them the direction to place those employees in these 2 years, anywhere within that. We have the good fortune of not having this problem at all in our office because we don't have anybody who's in the 2 years. So it's not something that will make us make a decision. So we really and overall the county. It's not for us to decide, it's for us to audit that it's being complied with.
The larger question is, have we voted on whether we're going to give any merit increases or not?
You approved it in the 2014 budget. It's included in the budgets.
And what did we approve?
You approved the scale with a 2.1% COLA and working towards the elimination of the B step.
But, okay, working toward,
Just the money.
so how much, was it a half step or 1.5 steps or?
For the majority of it, it's going to be a 1% step because most of those people got 1.5 in 2013 and will only be eligible for the step, the remaining 1% of the 2.5 step. Each year in January and July, we send out a request to the department heads to submit them. We audit them. We submit them to the board indicating if there's any deviances from the wage policy which are addressed. But other than that, it is recorded in the minutes, and we don't come to you and ask for a second motion because you've already approved it in the budget.
No, but you said that what we approved back there was the additional 1%. From one, we gave them 1.5, now we're gonna give them another 1%. So what are we talking, a step and a half?
No, I think I understand your question. And as it sits now, if you choose to do nothing, then those people on those half steps would only be eligible for a half step. They would not be eligible for the 1.5 steps because that would be outside of our wage policy.
And somebody that's on a not on a half step, but on on the proper place, they could get the 2.5%.
Yes.
Or 2 and
Yes.
what.
So if they're on the proper, we'll call it the proper step, they can get the full.
And
And if they're
that's
on the
got-
half, they can only go to the next.
And this
Not
is gonna
going
be
to
a
bees.
problem no matter what we do in trying to resolve this.
So the 1.5 step, why are we talking about that? Because either they're going up 1 or they're going up a half. They're not going up 1.5.
That was one of the options presented. that-
Yeah, I suppose, 5 could have been an option too, but,
Right.
okay, so it's not as big a deal really I mean.
We just, I think between the auditor's office and my department, we wanted to make you aware that there would be some inconsistencies, and the department heads, as they were submitting them, were making their own judgments on whether they held that person out for that first 6-month merit
Well,
increase.
option number 1 is what we've set in the budget.
Correct.
That's correct.
And so if
That's where we ought to stay.
Yep.
That's where we had the most discussion about this, was during the budgets.
Yeah, you don't need a motion to do nothing.
I'll leave the conversation.
Oh, maybe.
We talked a long time to do nothing.
I can make a motion to acknowledge the conversation.
I'm good.
Well, have a wonderful day. I'm off to Pier. I think I'm done now.
Mr. Chair, I think I can hurry this meeting up just a little bit.
Just a moment. Sure.
No, I was just,
No, that's what he was gonna talk about, was this
Oh,
item.
Okay.
I make a motion to approve the bid of Rapid Chevrolet for the package of 6 vehicles given to the sheriff and it's as presented. And it's in the public records over here to look at.
Is there a second?
I'll second it.
Motion and a second. Any discussion? Did you have a speech you wanted to make?
here if you have questions.
Don't snatch defeat from the jaws of victory. So thus Crudoy says.
There's no further questions or comments. All in favor of the motion, say aye.
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 Opposed? Motion carried.
Thank you.
Item 22A.
Good morning, Denny Gorton, Pennington County Fire. First of all, my item has nothing to do with budget supplements, merit pays, pay scales, or anything else. So
Just money.
hopefully it'll only take a second or two.
But it's
Just money.
worth $250,000.
It simply is, back in 2010, I brought a motion to the commissioners to earmark, KJ has other words, restricted funds, assigned funds, for what we wanted to use that $250,000 in cash reserves. KJ just says now it's time we just dissolve that $250,000 that has been assigned to a fund balance. The money's not gone away. The Fire Service Board will come to the commissioners in the near future and ask you to assign those funds to different projects. Those projects didn't come about mostly because other agencies couldn't support our part of it. So it's just a bookkeeping cleanup for KJ in the auditor's office. That's all it amounts to.
So we'd get this $250 out of the restricted fund, put it back into your general reserves.
Correct.
Can you tell me how much you got in your reserves?
I believe at the end of this year, we'll have 147,000.
Plus the 250?
Just 147,000, if I read the auditor's budget correctly.
So we don't have 250,000.
You're right, Don. It gets very confusing. We just assigned
guess
it,
so.
and that's why they need to clean it up.
But we didn't fund it. We assigned it, but we didn't fund it.
It just said, here's that money, that's what it's used for. I get confused
I
myself.
guess I'm confused because I thought when we set up a special reserve, we assigned money into that special reserve, we actually put cash in there so that it was available for that project if that project came to volition.
And I'm sorry, we did use some of those funds for the radio project last year out of that 250. We're down to about 140,
So why are we doing 250,000 then?
because that's the amount that KJ says was there. And
The original motion.
The original
allowed
motion was for
250,000.
250, so we just need to clean that up, take it away. Donna, Commissioner, I agree, I get confused with all the reserve and the assigned funds
It
and,
doesn't have $250,000.
yep, so,
And you don't account for it that way in your
no.
monthly budget. Whenever I see that, it's not that way. I don't know.
It's strictly a bookkeeping thing for the
So
auditor's office.
Karen, do you know, is this just an account? It's just a,
If I understand it right, it's just a label.
It's the name of the,
It's the name and the spending authority associated with that label. So it doesn't really exist, it's just the accounting, generally accepted accounting principles that go along with it.
kind of like the federal government. They just label something, they're having money, they just have a bunch of names.
It has no spending authority attached to
when
it or
when
anything.
this was created, Ron, there was $250,000 put in there.
Yeah, I guess.
And where'd it come from?
Maybe it'd be simpler just to rescind the motion that was made in 2010. That way, wouldn't worry about the 250 or the 147.
So, Mr. Chair, do we want to wait and ask KJ, have her come back in?
We could take care of this, at the next, on the 17th, is that the next commission?
Yep.
We could actually postpone it until then. I just asked KJ when should we put it on, and she says put it on for this meeting, so.
Good plan.
And then you can ask her those questions. Rachel.
I'll make a motion to move this to the next following meeting.
Second.
Motion and a second. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried.
Thanks.
Thank you,
Thank
Eddie.
you. And if I may, I know Dustin would have been here for that discussion, but I believe he has some sick children at home today, and so he's home taking care of those kids, so. Just to let you know where he was at. Thank you.
Thank you. You're on.
Let's just add some more confusion to all our discussions. First item I have is a resolution that we passed and adopted and amended last year. We started this in about August, September timeframe last year. We got a copy of the official state map electronically. We went through that official state map, did a resolution to try and get our county highway system to match what the state said. We did that, but as we were doing it, the state had wrong descriptions, wrong lengths of roads, wrong names, typos. So what they did, between us passing the resolution and when this was gonna go to the Transportation Commission in January, they had changed their map. So now, you read our resolution and you look at the state map and nothing works. We're back to square one where our system doesn't match their system. So anyway, with Larry Dean and myself and a couple of his staff members went through and rewrote the resolution. And I attached a copy of the original one so you can see all the minor little changes that has to be done. And so we need to set a hearing, and I sent a notice to the paper that we're gonna have a hearing, for the next commission meeting to discuss the resolution deleting these roads, with the proper descriptions and mileage and
Do you think this is done?
I hope so.
Oh, my gosh.
And then we will adopt the new one, which is attached on the very back with the way everybody agrees it should be, so.
You don't need
This is
nothing
just
today.
to let you know, I posted the hearing, it's gonna be on the 17th, and that's when you will take action.
Okay, just, the blue is.
Additions,
Is what?
additions or corrections, and the red is deletions.
Well, I just happened to look at page 3, and about the, sixth line down, it's got what used to be Fairview, and they're changing it to Farview. Is that look right?
I don't think so.
And it's called Fairhaven Drive later on in the sentence.
Farview, yeah, I'm gonna have to read that. Is it yeah. Was it Fairview, but it's actually Farview? I will double check that one.
Because it's spelled Fairhaven further into that line,
Uh,
F-A-I-R.
Let me look at the page 3.
Line 6.
Yeah, it's Farview is the actual name of that drive. It goes, if you look at page 3 of the corrected one, it says Farview Drive, beginning at Cliff Drive, east and south to Fairhaven Drive, a distance of 0.26 miles. This is within the Rapid City city limits. This is a road that the county should have got rid of 30 years ago.
And we're deleting all of these roads.
Yeah, we're deleting all these.
Okay.
How many miles roads are we deleting? Can we cut your budget then?
But then, yeah.
This is listed as the official county highway system, but these roads, we also passed a resolution placing a bunch of these roads back onto the county's secondary system.
Do you want to cut your budget with the?
Okay.
So anyway, this is basically for information. Any action, any official action will be at the hearing on the 17th.
Do we need to make a motion to?
I don't, not today.
Not today.
Just-
Okay. Then let's go to item B.
Item B is an approach permit for the Dollar General store. They were in here a couple weeks ago wanting a variance or whatever, and there was discussion on their driveway and where it was located. Since then, they called me and said, boy, we'd sure like to have an approach permit. I looked at it, talked to our engineers, and even though it would be a very short turning lane, there's enough room to stack two vehicles easily, possibly a third one because you have to have a transition from into the turning lane, so we could stack 2 cars, and with the third one easy enough, because it also has a center turn lane on Longview. So, to me, this helps the problem of getting people backed up on Highway 44, trying to make that.
Are they willing to put that in?
Well, that's a stipulation. That's the only way I'm gonna approve the approach, with that condition that they have to put in a turning lane.
Okay. I'd make a motion to approve the approach permit as recommended by the Pennington County Highway Department for the Dollar General store located on Longview Drive, or Longview Road.
Second.
I will, but.
We have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Hearing none, those in favor of the motion say aye.
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 Opposed? Motion carried.
Thank you.
Thank you, Heine.
Yeah.
Okay, item 24. Request for a West Dakota Water Development District for a Spring Creek update.
Good afternoon, Chairman and Commissioners. Thank you. My name is Denise Livingston. I am the manager of West Dakota Water Development District, and I am here to request a informational and update report to the West Dakota Board. As you probably know, I've been the manager for the past year. My board is a 9-member board. 4 of those members are also new as of last January. And so it is my goal and my task to make sure that my board members have adequate and proper information. The Spring Creek 319 program is a very important program, and I just want to make sure that my board members are properly informed. Last May, they were asked to continue their project support, and my board voted to deny that support, and that was based mainly on they didn't have adequate information to make an informed decision. And so I would just like to ask the board to consider allowing an informational report done. And I'm not in any kind of drastic hurry. I did see Brittany's report here for you, and we are willing to wait till March, May for that report, so after the 2013 information is presented to this board. I would like to have the opportunity to have it presented to the West Dakota Board. And also, please keep in mind that West Dakota is also a public entity, and so this could qualify as a public outreach as well.
Any comments or questions?
Just one
Yes.
question. You know, the same type of report was available earlier in 2013. Are you saying you didn't get that?
I'm saying that when the board made the decision on the funding at that meeting, that they didn't have the adequate information at that meeting. Even though, I provided the information to them in the report, the link to the website and everything, they didn't have adequate information at that meeting to make the decision.
Mr. Chair?
Yes.
Denise, since you're the one that's in the firing line today, really, why should we expend county and federal and state tax dollars to send our employees to West Dakota Water when they denied the help to the project? So my suggestion is that the information is at the planning department. They could give you a copy of what they have when the time comes. But I think that our people should stay here and notify and tell us what they're going to do with this project before they tell anybody else.
I appreciate that, Commissioner Davis. And yes, and you have a very good point. But I also want to remind you that West Dakota was a sponsor of this project from the very beginning. And I believe West Dakota can be a very strong, viable partner again.
Well, and certainly, it's an open meeting when all of this is presented, and it's on the YouTube, and you can get discs. I mean, I just don't want anyone to think that the information was not available to you that was presented to us, and there are many, many different ways that you can get that information other than, you can certainly come here.
You're
Listen.
right. You're right. And but as a manager, I'm just trying to make it convenient for my board members, trying to get that information out there. And yes, there is a responsibility to my board members to educate themselves, but I am, as a manager, trying to get reports to my community or to my board members on every issue that is affecting our water quality resources. This last month, I had Mark Hollenbeck for uranium mining and everything. So it is just another public format. It's open to the public, it's for the public, but it's also trying to get the information to my board members as well. So I would just really appreciate you considering allowing that as a venue.
Any other comments or questions? Were you coming up to comment?
I'm Dan Richer, West Dakota Water Development Director for Area 2. I don't think the money was declined because of misinformation. I think it was declined because of the internal politics within the board.
Which board?
The water board. Because they had voted twice in 2012 to make the Area 2 Director representative on the advisory group, and then signed a contract that went against their both votes. So I don't think there was any misinformation out there. They knew the information.
Okay.
This vote didn't occur because of misinformation. The other thing, again, I'm going to have to agree with Commissioner Davis. I've been out of the loop for a couple weeks, and so this is kind of catching me with my pants down. But I don't think we need a briefing from you guys concerning this matter until we decide we're gonna get back in it. So I have to agree with him. Until we decide we're gonna get back in the thing or not, we don't need anything. If we need the information, we can go online and get it. We can go down to planning and zoning and get it. We can come to the meeting and get it. So, and that's where I stand on it.
That's, Mr. Chair. That's your personal opinion, Mr. Richard?
That is my personal opinion, yes.
Thank you.
I'm George Farabee, just as a quick follow-up. Hill City, 2014, is no longer a contributor to the Spring Creek project. So if West Dakota changes their mind, the board changes their mind, they'll be the only sponsor, other than the state of South Dakota and EPA, to funding the project. And by the way, the non-point task force is meeting today, the 319 task force. I talked to the chairman last night of that task force. He doesn't know how the board will vote. His task force will vote. But he's going to recommend highly that Spring Creek not be funded. Thank you.
That's fine.
Mr. Chair.
Yeah.
It's funny that we haven't had any information from these people that are holding these meetings and making these decisions. And I guess that bothers me a little bit that Pennington County would not be notified by the proper authorities in those organizations.
I'm sorry, can you please clarify that?
Well, Mr. Farabee gets up here and tells us two different organizations and are holding meetings today, and they're not going to fund and support the 319 project. We've heard nothing about that. And I don't think any of our employees have. So I'm wondering just what's happening.
I believe Brittany is there in Pierre today for the 319.
Is what?
Brittany is there in Pierre today for the 319 program.
Mr. Chair?
Yes.
I think I can hurry this up just a little bit. I would make a motion to notify West Dakota Water to attend when we are updated on the 319 project in the spring. They can attend our meeting here.
Do we have a second?
I'll second that.
Any discussion?
The motion is to what now?
To notify.
To notify them to, they can attend the meeting.
Any other comments? If not, we have a motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
Does that work for you?
That works. Thank you very much.
Okay, item 25. Planning and zoning.
Mr. Chair,
consent agenda.
I think about a 10-minute comfort break wouldn't hurt a thing.
Well, we'll find out, won't
I
we?
think so too. We've been going at it.
Second.
Yeah.
And we have the planning and zoning consent agenda. Dan?
Good afternoon, Dan Jennison, Pennington County Planning Director. The Board of Commissioner uses the consent agenda to act on non-controversial and routine planning and zoning items quickly. The consent agenda is acted upon by one motion and vote of the board. Items may be removed from the consent agenda and placed on the regular agenda at the request of a board member or a citizen. The consent agenda of the planning and zoning contains the following items. First, item A is a second reading of rezone 1319 for James and Charlotte Steele. Fitz Land serving as the agent, and approval is recommended. Item B is a second reading of rezoning request 1315 and comprehensive plan amendment 1309. Neil Tschetter, and approval is also recommended.
Does anyone wish to have any of the items on the consent agenda removed?
Make a motion to approve the consent agenda.
Second.
Moved and seconded to approve the consent agenda as presented. Any discussion? If not, all in favor of the motion say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried. Next item is item C.
Is a road construction within a section line right-of-way, 1303 Wade Green is to construct a road within the section line. in order to provide access to the applicant's property. Staff is recommending approval with 7 conditions. This is located, it's approximately a half-mile of roadway located just north of the Rapid City Regional Airport. Proposed roadway will be used as a driveway for a residence located on an 80-acre tract of land owned by the applicant. On November 5th, the applicant received approval from the county board to waive the requirement of submitting engineered road construction plans in order to construct this road. He has requested, in lieu of the 24-foot requirement in Ordinance 14, to reduce it down to a 14-foot wide gravel surface instead of the 24. Property is currently zoned general ag and surrounded by farmland all around it. Both the Water Protection Coordinator and DNR requested that he get a stormwater permit because it will be over an acre in land. He has indicated to me that if he gets approval, he will be getting that permit. County Board has approved 2 other section line road right-of-way constructions with a minimum of a 16-foot driving surface under similar circumstances where the road was going to be nothing but a driveway to a piece of property. So that is staff's recommendation that they be, the road be improved to a 16-foot rather than the 14-foot, given the fact that that's what County Board approved in the past. And I did talk to the applicant. He is agreeable to the conditions as written, as they are written right now, as Planning Commission, or as staff has recommended.
Mr. Chair, I do have a couple of questions for you, Dan. Especially, you mentioned the Tiltram one. If I remember correctly, that was coming off of a corner, and the highway department preferred that it go the way that it went, that it was situated the way it went. I remember Mark Schock being here and asking that we do that. And to me, it was a great deal different than this. So I kind of am not sure I would use that as an example.
Well, my thought was is that it was still providing access to just one property, and that's where I thought it was similar.
For a different situation. So I'm curious now about Hancock, because I personally recognize that Tiltram was not that.
It wasn't as long, but it was still just providing access to a single property.
Yeah, but the problem was really that the highway department, that was coming off a county road, that the highway department really wanted to have a different turn than what our ordinances would have asked that Tiltram put in. And so the highway department was kind of driving that they wanted, for maintenance reasons and so on, to have it go right straight off the corner.
Yes.
Mr. Chair,
Yes.
did you say the applicant is agreeable to make it a 16-foot wide rather than his requested 14?
Yes.
And I also know. So they've got building permits in their building, but they don't have the permission, they don't have the road done, I guess and there isn't any housing unit there yet, and, I mean, ordinarily, we would ask that
Well, okay, this is the existing north and south section line, right here. And that is anywhere from a 14 to a 18-foot wide section line road already. His request is to start from this location and go west approximately in this area. It is an existing section line. It is actually drivable. It isn't gravel. There's no ditches at this time.
That's not what I'm asking. I said that there isn't currently like a home there.
No.
So he's building secondary buildings, maybe secondary isn't the right word. I mean, don't we usually have to have some
The property, there is a difference between general ag and limited ag. This property is zoned general ag, and these are ag structures, so he does have building permits for these ag structures on the property.
Okay.
Mr. Chair?
Yes.
I'd make a motion to approve the road resurfacing as presented by the planning department with the 7 conditions.
Second.
Motion and second. Any further discussion? Any questions or comments? Not, those in favor of the motion say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried.
Thank you.
Thank you, Dan. Okay, next item 26, items from the chair. Holly, I didn't, I either got my packet mixed up enough I didn't see the tax increment guidelines in it. Does everyone have a copy of those?
I got him.
I got one.
Okay,
What'd they do with them?
essentially, just wanted to call your attention to the fact that these proposed guideline changes are in the mill, so to speak. Commissioner Buskerud and I are the designated commissioners on the TIF committee. And I don't know if you've had a chance to look them over or not.
I read through them. I needed a little longer to digest it. They're not the easiest things in the world.
I'm the same as you, but
When we have our comments, when do we give them? I have some comments.
I'm not sure. Have you heard, Holly, when they're going to meet to?
Public Works meeting is next, I'd have to look at the front of that.
I'm missing it, but
December 10th.
Yeah, to allow staff to receive comments from the community regarding the proposed changes. That's why I put it on today's agenda. But then I believe it has to go through the full council.
Well, could we give our comments to you guys? I'm assuming you'll be there.
We can certainly.
Okay.
is it acceptable for you to receive those, Holly, and compile them? So if you do have observations and recommendations,
I'll make contact with the mayor's office just to get the full scope of when it's gonna move into sequence, and if there's any other deadlines that we need to meet.
Okay.
are you comfortable with that?
Can we hear what her comments are, or we don't want to take the time for that?
That's fine.
Okay.
That's fine.
Well, I'm just curious.
Yeah. I mean, I could be wrong on some of this, and you guys can just discount it. But if you go, they're not numbered, but let's just say that the title page, tax increment financing is 1. If you go to page 3, under item number 11, and maybe that whole section is kind of related. One of the things that I noticed is that if the developer is proposing oversizing and additional improvements, then they can apply for complete funding through a TIF. And that's sort of like what we just talked about with our budget. Well, couldn't he, if he's upsizing, but he could afford the regular requirements, why isn't he responsible for the regular part, and then the TIF would just finance the difference for the upsizing?
I thought that was the way it was.
Well, it doesn't sound like it here.
It should be.
Yeah, it doesn't sound like it in that, and I just want to know for sure if I'm reading it right.
That's what it used to be.
I can't comment on whether or not you're reading it right, but in most, it would seem logical to me that if in the development of an area and the comprehensive plan is in place and oversizing was due or was justified to accommodate future growth beyond this area, that it would be in the city's interest to have that oversized at the time rather than doing it later.
And I understand that, but I'm reading this, and I could be wrong, that then if that's the case, then the developer gets the whole shebang rather than getting a TIF for the difference of what the city's requesting and what the developer's willing to do. And I just want to make sure that that's not
Yeah,
right.
we need to do that.
Okay? And like I said, I could be reading it wrong. And then let's see if that'll be 4 or 5. It's actually page 6. And under the additional local criteria, it says use of tax increment financing for the project will not result in a net loss of pre-existing tax revenues to the city and other taxing jurisdictions. Well, what proof is there that that's happening? I mean, how do they prove that? That it doesn't cause a problem for the county or the school district? How do we know that? Isn't there a way that could be more identified, or a requirement that be shown? Do they provide that information to us? I haven't been to one of those meetings in a long time, but I don't remember that was required.
But under the taxing, they're just talking about the net loss of pre-existing tax revenues, and the auditor's office, and when they do the tax notification on those TIF areas, they show what the prior taxes were on that area, bare land or whatever, and then what the new taxes are that's going towards the TIF. Isn't that right, Karen? So it's shown, I mean, and it's audited by your office, I think, isn't it?
So maybe I'm in the wrong place here, but what I'm heading for is that we hear over and over again, it does not make any difference. It is to our advantage to have this. But we know that cash flow wise, it's not to our advantage in the county. We know that we have expenses, and that as you go on down on that same page, under 4.9, it says that allowable project costs are the imputed administrative fees due to the city. Well, the county has costs. Why can't the county have reimbursements from that TIF? I guess what I'm searching for is a way that every time one of these TIFs is approved, that there is some way to say, I'll just give this example. Currently, we have $100,000 worth of land, worth of tax revenue that is committed on land. And they approve a new TIF, and that raises it to $150,000. Maybe that's not a real good way of saying it. But what I'm trying to do is, I hear over and over again from the city council, well, it doesn't affect you at all. It has nothing, and there's no effect. Well, I believe that we should have some requirement showing it does affect us. And we should ask that be a part of the requirements. And nowhere here is the county's part in it really addressed, other than you guys get to be on. Which doesn't mean anything because you're outvoted anyway.
Well, what you really need to do is get our friends down at the legislature to allow them to only put a TIF on their portion of the property tax.
You know I agree with you on that. But my point is, that is not likely to happen. But what we could do is make some, because the legislature doesn't understand it either. And if there isn't a way that we can require that the effects of this be made more public and more private, to me it's worth the try to say, okay, you guys, you're changing this, well then you need to add in there a requirement that says counties can be reimbursed for their costs, that the effect on the county and the school district is laid out, that we know how much total we're actually dealing with in I lost the word, I apologize. But it just seems like if they're going to be changing this might be an opportunity to at least say something about how we do not, I mean, we don't really have any information out there to them or to the state legislators that really tells those true figures. And we need to do that.
Yeah,
If
we
we're
do.
gonna get, if we're gonna get some kind of, realistic decision on these TIFs, because right now, they believe that all new, I mean, it doesn't affect anything that we do. You know? And we need to keep that, we need to somehow get that requirement, and the developer should be able to provide that for them.
So what you're looking for is a statement by the developer of the ramifications of
Yes.
putting a TIF on property basically outside of the municipality.
Yeah.
Well,
It's gonna be hard though for the,
It won't be
Inside too.
outside the municipalities, on the inside, the
But the
inside.
problem is, and I hate to say it, but what are the
You don't want-
expenses that do we have?
Well,
Well,
we
we-
have to
yeah,
We
collect
have some
taxes.
sheriff, we have some auditor.
state's attorney, jail, public defender, county welfare office. I mean, you got all those expenses. Now, to try to put that back though on the developer to identify what those costs are gonna be, that's gonna really be difficult.
Well, so
for
how
that
are the
developer.
administrative fees?
Well, the administrative fees I think they're talking about there is when a developer goes to City Hall and he has to pay their inspection fees, he can put that into the TIF because that's an expense that he's had in putting that infrastructure in.
Well, we have to collect the taxes on it. We have to make sure that we write the checks to all of the different entities. I mean, there's a cost there.
If TIF dissolves halfway through the year,
There's something.
that money still is being collected, we have to apportion it back out.
They've
That's
changed
what we
the-
like to do, dissolve a budget in 1 year.
Or
See, and
good for the economic development.
But, you know, identifying all those expenses that county government has with that kind of development, it's really hard to anticipate what those are gonna be, because, you know, they got a TIF out there with the new mall, whatever they call that thing.
Rushmore Crossing.
Crossing, and then over there where the Higgs built the motels and the Cabela's, you don't think that there's ever been a crime committed around any of those? Do you think maybe
But I
the,
don't think they can be
tax-
as directly related as your administrative costs in the auditor's office and the treasurer's office. So,
Okay, I think the key is to think through recommended changes, get them to Holly, and Commissioner Buskerud will make sure the committee hears it. He will argue
Ask him
on
to
behalf
put
of the county.
Commissioner Busker, ask them to put an amendment in there that they will only apply this to their taxes, not to
see,
everybody
that's
else.
my point.
They could do that in this little
Yeah, they can.
document.
I wouldn't care to go back to the legislature and try it again, but,
No.
'cause I just about got run out of here.
First of all, you gotta whip up on the municipal league, and then you gotta turn the crank on our
But,
group
yeah,
to make them
I-
do something.
I don't
I know, but,
I don't think that we can do that.
no.
What I'm saying is that we have not put the information out there, and it should be required, because that gives the true picture of whether or not they should approve it.
See, the problem is, and I agree 100% with you, the problem is that whenever you bring it up to the city or to the legislature, to anybody else, it is, you are trying to stifle economic development, aren't you? That's exactly what you're doing. No, it's not. Yes, that's I mean, when we tried last year at the legislature, all the municipal league got up and said was, there's been $500 million worth of these TIFs in South Dakota, and look what, look what it did for here, and it built this place, and look what it did. They don't want to talk about. I said, no, we're not against them. We just want to say so in this. Nope. Don't want you to have a say so, because the minute the county has a say so, the economic development in this whole state will disappear.
That's the story.
That's their story. That's the end of it. And the legislature just bites onto that, and that's the end of it.
Still think we gotta try.
You gotta try it, yeah. I know.
Okay, let's go to committee reports.
Part of their policy.
You have a committee report?
Yes, Mr. Chair, I do. Last week, we had the pleasure of having General and Mrs. Mark Welch, Chief of Staff of the United States Air Force here Had a tour of the base with him and that kind of thing, and had a dinner at the Chop House for him, and the governor and John Thune were both here, and representative of Johnson's office in Gnomes. It was an interesting deal. And also the Chief Master Sergeant of the Air Force, James Cody, was here with General Welch. I mentioned a couple of weeks ago, or I guess maybe 2 meetings back, about the project that we're putting together to try to raise funds for the rancher relief and that chili feed coming up on December 19th at the event center at the fairgrounds. Right now, I understand we have 32 roasters of chili committed, still use more, and hopefully we can get several hundred people there, or 1,000, whatever it takes to try to make this thing work. December 19th, 11:30 to 1:30 the first serving, and 4:30 to 7:30 the next. And if any of you want to come out and help, we'd be glad to have you.
Mr. Busford?
I do not have anything, thank you.
Your turn, Nancy.
Well, I went to the Black Hills National Forest Advisory Board last week, and the Mountain Pine Beetle Working Group, and they're moving forward. The storm kind of messed up some of that of the programs, but they're getting back into swing of everything, and we're looking at, as far as a state, going ahead and asking for some more funding to help with the mountain pine beetle. The advisory board, that's a new experience for me, but certainly they have a lot going on, and we're going to be this area, because we've had that collaborative effort with the mountain pine beetle, and we kind of know how to do that. We will be a prototype for a new way, based on science and using collaborative efforts to make the forest healthier and to minimize wildfire. And so that is going to be starting in the next year. That's a pretty big deal for our area to be chosen to do that. And so I'm kind of excited to see where that'll all go. Certainly I'd be glad to have some of the funding come in to deal with wildfire mitigation, and that will bring part of that in. So.
Do you have an ag tax tomorrow?
Huh?
Do you have an ag tax meeting tomorrow?
Yes.
Yes, I'm sorry, we do.
At 9 o'clock?
At 9 o'clock at the...
I have one more thing.
Yes.
Next Friday, the 13th, I think at noon, in Sturgis is the Black Hills Association of County Commissioners meeting. We're going to try to have as many legislators there as possible to discuss whatever, a few resolutions that we've proposed. And I think Nancy's going to give her spiel on the Ag Committee and the bugs.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
That's in Sturgis again?
Yeah.
What's the name of that place?
I forgot.
Easy Rider.
Easy Riders.
Rider.
What happened to moving those around just every now and then to different places? So
We're going to have to do something because there's getting to be very, very few people, commissioners, that go to them, and so there's going to have to be some wholesale changes made. And I don't know if moving them around is part of it or what.
Okay, anything else? If not, the next item is items from the public.
Earlier on, you talked about budget supplement for the winter storm that we had in October, and I was highly encouraged by Don Holloway's comments, and I certainly encourage you folks to take his lead. We got to start paying for some of this stuff ourselves. About a year ago, individual in Sioux Falls, maybe it might have been 2 years ago, they had a storm, and they were into FEMA's pocket, and one of the individuals said, we Sioux Falls have a $30 or $40 million reserve. Let's pay our own way. So maybe there's some thinking. Let's pay our own way. Let's quit sticking our hand in other people's pockets. But thank you, Don. For the record, I believe I'm correct that Denise Livingston got up here a little while ago and said that she was a manager for West Dakota Water Development District, which is a taxing entity, by the way. It's a government organization. She's the administrator. To me, there's a huge difference between administrator and manager. She acts like manager. I mentioned earlier that the task force, the 319, the non-point source task force is meeting today in Pierre. The chairman and I talked about Spring Creek and about Belle Fourche. Yesterday in the paper, headlines, Belle Fourche is asking that Watershed Alliance, partnership, whatever it's called, about 10 million so far, counting in kind. And they want another 500,000. The chairman thought he's going to work really hard, or he's going to work really hard to get that number reduced considerably. Here again, the storm, another 500,000 for those folks on top of 10 million. You know, at some point it's got to end. The paper talked about bacteria and mud or sediment in Belle Fourche River. I haven't lived on the Belle Fourche like apparently Ken has, but to me, that Belle Fourche River is always going to be muddy, like the Missouri and the Mississippi. So what are we doing trying to get the mud out of the Belle Fourche River? The bacteria, I don't imagine many of those ranchers are going to want to keep their cows out of the creek for water. So you're always going to have bacteria. And the chairman said that he thinks that EPA is going to cut back again this year on the 319 funds. How much he didn't know, but I suggested to him, let's just quit. Just quit. Now, maybe the east. There's a river that feeds into the Sioux Falls River that probably does need some work, and I wouldn't deny that. But Spring Creek doesn't need any work. And the Belle Fourche River, guy's been running cows for, 100 years or so?
Only 100?
Anyway, thank you much.
Okay, next item is item
Motion.
29.
Motion to go into executive session, purposes of personnel
Contractual.
and
Or
contractual.
second?
Second.
Motion and a second. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried.